Hello everyone, Persephone here, and welcome back to the Storyteller's Corner, episode 19, where we finally get into the end of Pinocchio. Now, I should turn this down. Sorry. Apologies for the change of plans. Due to certain events, I have to do the live stream now. Normally I do it at 11, but some errands need to be run. And, well, sometimes I like to go out for the ride. But, yeah. This live stream will finally wrap up the Pinocchio story as I read the remaining 13 chapters. I wanted to make it to where it would be 12 each, but my math was a little off. So that's that. And there go my speakers, because my speakers hate me. Welcome to the live stream. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. But yes, the story of Pinocchio has been quite the clustercuss and extremely messed up. We've seen Pinocchio murder Jiminy Cricket, essentially. He's called the Talking Cricket, but he's more well known in the Disney version as Jiminy Cricket. But yeah, Pinocchio has murdered the Talking Cricket. He has avoided death on numerous occasions. He has been conned, swindled, and he served as a guard dog. And he helped the farmer find the weasels that were killing his chickens. So Pinocchio is essentially trying to learn from his mistakes. He is trying to become a better person. But despite the fact that he is trying to be a better person, I think everyone who is living and breathing can verify that changing your ways and breaking old habits tends to be a little harder than just swearing off of it. It takes time. And this story knows that. Again, Carlo Collodi was an amazing writer, despite the fact that this is the only book of his that I have read. But his story is so full of morals, and he doesn't hesitate with said morals. So once the song is over, whether people come or not, I will read part 3, essentially, of Pinocchio. But, yes. Oh, oops, I forgot to post the thing. No wonder. I have the attention span of a coked up goldfish sometimes. But, yes. The story of Pinocchio has certainly been a wild ride. I'm going to make sure it's not too loud so it doesn't overshadow me speaking. But, yeah, the story of Pinocchio has been kind of a wild ride, but it's certainly an enjoyable ride. I love the way Carlo Collodi writes and how this story is clearly fantasy. I mean, heavily, obviously. We got fairies, talking foxes, talking cats. We got a city where animals, butterflies, and other such creatures can sell parts of themselves. Like the butterflies selling their wings. That still gets me. It's like, jump trap. This place is bleak, depressing. Butterfly, why would you ever sell your wings? They're pretty. Why? I don't know. But yeah. And I love how the blue fairy is very patient, and she has that motherly, older, sisterliness about her as she tries to steer Pinocchio in the right way. And again, he does try, but he ends up making mistakes. And as my mom likes to say, a mistake is only a mistake if you don't learn from it. And Pinocchio is learning. He is trying to. He wants to be better. But as I mentioned before, becoming a better person and growing from your mistakes isn't as easy as just saying it. It's easier said than done. And there go my speakers again. Maybe we all need to grow into holiday. All right, hi, welcome. Feel free to make comments, and they left. Anyway, the song is over, and now we will get into the story, which the remaining chapters are chapters 23 to chapter 36. And I promise Pinocchio does eventually get better and better. It's just going to take a while. So, last we left off, Pinocchio had just tattletaled on the weasels, and the farmer is going to get them killed. And because the farmer is overjoyed that Pinocchio actually did his job, he let him go and undid the dog collar around his neck. Do you remember last stream that caused a bit of a laugh? Anyway, chapter 23. As soon as the hard, humiliating weight of the collar was lifted from his neck, Pinocchio began dashing across the fields, and he didn't stop for a single moment until he reached the main road that he knew should lead back to the fairy's little house. Once on the main road, Once on the main road, he looked down the hill to the flat country below, and there, perfectly visible to the naked eye, was the forest where he had, alas, encountered the fox and the cat. He could see, rising above the other trees, the top of the big oak from which he had been left dangling by the neck, but he could not see, though he looked this way and that, the little house of the beautiful girl with sky-blue hair. Suddenly, he had a dreadful premonition, and running with all the strength left in his legs, he soon found himself in the clearing where the little white house had once stood. But the little white house was no longer there. In its place stood a small slab of marble, which could be read, in block letters, these painful words. Here lies the girl with sky-blue hair, who died of grief after being abandoned by her little brother Pinocchio. After struggling mightily to read those words, Pinocchio felt, well, I'll let you imagine how he felt. He fell forward onto the ground, covered the gravestone with 1,000 kisses, and burst into tears. He cried all through the night, and the next morning, when the sun came up, he was crying still, though by this point he had no tears left in his eyes. His cries and laments were so heartrending and piercing that all of the surrounding hills kept repeating their echo. And as he cried, he said, "Oh, little fairy, why did you die? Why couldn't I have died instead? I who am so wicked while you were so good. And where in the world is my daddy? Oh, little fairy, please tell me you're not really dead. If you truly love your little brother, come back to life. Come back like you were before. Doesn't it bother you to see me alone, abandoned by everyone? If the murderers come, they'll hang me again from that branch, and then I'll die forever. What do you want me to do? All alone in this world. Now that I've lost you and my daddy, who will feed me? Where will I sleep at night? Who will make me a new jacket? Oh, it would be better 100 times better if I died too. Yes, I want to die. Boo-hoo-hoo." It does say that in the book. I'm not exaggerating. So, despairing in this fashion, he made as if to tear out his hair. But since his hair was wooden, he didn't even have the satisfaction of sticking his fingers into it. Just then, a great pigeon hovering above him on extended wings shouted down from a great height, "Tell me, child, what are you doing down there?" "Can't you see? I'm crying," Pinocchio said, looking up at that voice and rubbing his eyes with his coat sleeve. "Say," added the pigeon, "you wouldn't by any chance happen to know someone, a puppet, named Pinocchio?" "Pinocchio? Did you say Pinocchio?" repeated the puppet, jumping to his feet. "I'm Pinocchio." Hearing this, the pigeon swooped down and landed on the ground. He was larger than a turkey. "Then you must know Geppetto too." "Know him? He's my poor daddy. Did he by any chance tell you about me? Can you take me to him? Is he alive? Answer me, please. Is he still alive?" "I left him 3 days ago on the seashore." "What was he doing?" "He was building himself a rowboat to cross the ocean, and for more than 4 months that poor man has been roaming the world looking for you. And having failed to find you, he has now gotten the notion to look for you in the distant lands of the New World." "How far is it from here to the shore?" Pinocchio asked with breathless worry. "More than 1,000 kilometers." 1,000 kilometers? Oh, dear pigeon, how happy I'd be if I had your wings. If you wish to go, I'll take you myself. How? You can ride on my back. Are you heavy? Heavy? Not at all. I'm as light as a feather. So without another word, Pinocchio leapt onto the pigeon's back, straddling the bird like a horse. He shouted happily, "Gallop, gallop, little horsey! I have got to get there soon!" The pigeon took flight and soon was soaring so high that they almost touched the clouds. Having reached that extraordinary height, the puppet turned out of curiosity and looked down, which left him so scared and dizzy that he looped his arms ever so tightly around the neck of his feathered mount to keep from falling off. They flew all day toward evening. The pigeon said, "I'm very thirsty." "And I'm very hungry," added Pinocchio. "Let's stop for a few minutes at this pigeon coop, then resume our journey again, so we can reach the seashore by tomorrow morning." In the deserted pigeon coop, they only found a bowl full of water and a basket heaped with veg peas. The puppet had never, in his whole life, been able to stand veg peas. He said they nauseated him, turned his stomach, but that evening he ate them until he nearly burst. And when he had almost finished, he turned to the pigeon and said, "I never believed that veg peas could taste so good." "You have to realize, my boy," replied the pigeon, "that when hunger is real and there's nothing else to eat, even veg peas become delicious. Hunger is neither picky nor greedy." They wolfed down their snack and were on their way again. The next morning, they reached the seashore. The pigeon set Pinocchio down, and not wishing to be bothered even for thanks for his good deed, flew off at once and disappeared. I mean, you do you, pigeon, but at the very least, I was raised where if someone does something nice for you, you always say thank you. So, you do you, pigeon. Disappeared. Okay. The beach was crowded with people looking out to sea, shouting and gesticulating, which that's a way of saying they were pointing and making motions with their hands. They were very animated, so to speak. "What happened?" Pinocchio asked a little old woman. "What happened is that some poor father who has lost his son has decided to row a boat across the sea looking for him on the other side. But the sea today is very rough, and his boat is about to go under." "Where is the boat?" "Over there. See where I'm pointing?" said the old woman, aiming her finger at a small boat that looked, from this distance, like a walnut shell with an itty-bitty man in it. Reference to Thumbelina? I don't know. After gazing carefully at that direction, Pinocchio let out a piercing shriek. "That's my daddy! That's my daddy!" Meanwhile, the boat, battered by the raging sea, now disappeared between the enormous waves, now rose upon their crests. Pinocchio, standing on a high rock, never stopped calling out to his daddy or signaling him, with his hands in his hanky and even his cap. And it seemed that Geppetto, though far from the shore, recognized his son, for he also took off his cap and waved it, indicating with wild gestures that he would gladly come back, but that the sea was so rough that he was unable to work his oars to get closer to shore. Suddenly, there was a terrifying wave, and the boat disappeared. Everyone waited for it to rise up again, but no trace of it remained. "Poor man," said the fishermen who were gathered there on the shore, and muttering a prayer beneath their breath, they turned to go back to their homes. Just then they heard a desperate cry, and looking back they saw a little boy throwing himself from a high rock into the sea, shouting, "I will save my daddy!" Since he was made entirely of wood, Pinocchio floated easily and could swim like a fish. I think the more correct term would be swim like a puppet, but either way, it works. And wood does float, so People watched him swim, now disappearing beneath the surface, carried by the strength of the current, and now reappearing with an arm and a leg, a great distance from land. Finally, they lost sight of him completely. "Poor boy," said the fishermen who were gathered there on the shore, and muttering a prayer beneath their breath, they went back to their homes. Since you three people are here, welcome. Feel free to leave comments. I enjoy reading them as I read. Chapter 24. Pinocchio, driven by the hope of arriving in time to help his poor daddy, swam all through the night. And what a horrible night it was! It poured, it hailed, it thundered menacingly, and the flashes of lightning sometimes made it bright as day. Near dawn, he spied a long strip of land nearby. It was an island in the middle of the sea. He tried his best to reach its shore, but in vain. The waves, racing and tumbling over each other, tossed him about as if he were a twig or a piece of straw. At last, unfortunately for him, there came a wave so mighty and ferocious that it hurled him bodily onto the beach. He hit the ground so hard that all his ribs and joints cracked. But he quickly consoled himself by saying, "Once again, I've made a narrow escape." And I'm just here thinking, you hit the ground so hard that your ribs and your joints cracked. I'm pretty sure if I was in that scenario, I would be screaming in pure agony because human bodies don't work like that. But then again, he is made out of extremely tough wood, so sometimes there are perks to being a puppet, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Meanwhile, the sky gradually cleared, the sun came out in all its glory, and the sea became as smooth and gentle as oil. After laying his clothes out to dry in the sun, the puppet began to look this way and that, hoping he might spot out on that vast expanse of water a little rowboat with a tiny man inside. But no matter how hard he looked, he saw nothing before him but the sky, the sea, and a few sails so far away they looked like flies. I wish at least I knew what this island is called, he said. I wish I at least knew if this island was inhabited by well-mannered people. I mean, people who aren't in the habit of hanging children from tree branches. But just who can I ask? Who, if nobody's here? This thought of finding himself all alone in that big uninhabited island, put him in such a sad mood that he was on the verge of tears. At that moment, a short distance from the shore, he saw an enormous fish swimming by, going quietly about his business, with his whole head above the water. Not knowing the fish's name, the puppet called loudly to him, "Hey, Mr. Fish!" Puppet perks. Yeah, I mean, again, if a human hit the ground that hard that their ribs and their joints cracked, they'd either be screaming in agony and in need of a cleric, or they'd be dead, because loose ribs surround your lungs, and if a broken rib punctures your lung, like, rest in peace, basically. So, yeah. Okay, talking to the fish. "Hey, Mr. Fish, could I have a word with you?" "Do if you like," replied the fish, who was a dolphin, and one of the nicest ones in all the seas of the world. Rip, yeah. So talking to a fish, but the fish is actually a dolphin. It's an easy mistake, especially if you're a kid and you don't know that there are various different fish. Okay, nicest one in all the seas of the world. "Would you be so kind as to tell me if there are villages on this island where one might get something to eat without the danger of getting eaten?" "There certainly are," replied the dolphin. "Indeed, you find one not far from here. Which way should I go to get there?" "Just go straight down that path there, to your left, and follow your nose. You can't miss it." "I have one more question. Since you roam the sea all day and all night, I wonder if by any chance you've come across a little rowboat with my daddy in it?" "And who might your daddy be?" "He's the best daddy in the world, and just as I'm the worst of sons. With that storm we had last night," replied the dolphin, "the little rowboat must have sunk." "And my daddy?" "By now he has probably been swallowed by the terrible shark, who came to our water several days ago to spread death and woe." "This shark, is he very big?" asked Pinocchio, already trembling with fear. "Is he big?" replied the dolphin. "To give you an idea, I'll tell you that he's bigger than a 5-story house, with a mouth so wide and so deep that an entire railway train could easily pass through it with its locomotive steaming." "Oh dear!" cried the frightened puppet, hastily putting his clothes back on. He turned to the dolphin and said, "Farewell, Mr. Fish. Please excuse the bother, and 1,000 thanks for your kindness." With these words, he made straight for the path and began walking quickly down it, so quickly he almost seemed to be running. And with the slightest noise, he would turn around suddenly, afraid of being followed by that terrible shark that was big as a 5-story house and had a railway train in his mouth. "That's a huge shark, Rip." Yeah, and once again, Pinocchio, wooden boy, kid logic, being chased by the shark on land. I don't know how to tell you this, Pinocchio, but sharks can't go on land. If a shark does go on land, that usually means they're quite very well dead. So, But again, Pinocchio's a little kid, so. Okay. After walking more than half an hour, he came to a small village called Busy Bee Village. The streets swarmed with people going this way and that about their business. All were working. All had something to do. You couldn't find a loafer or a layabout even if you looked with a magnifying glass. And I actually do got a magnifying glass pendant, so had to make the reference somehow. I can see, thought that lazy bones Pinocchio at once, that this is not my kind of village. I wasn't born to work. Meanwhile, his hunger was gnawing at him because he hadn't eaten a thing for more than 24 hours, not even a bowl of vetch peas. He hasn't eaten anything for a whole day. Let's see. What to do? He only saw 2 ways to break his fast. Either ask for a little work, or beg for a nickel, or a bite of bread. He was ashamed to beg, because his father had always preached that only the old and the sick have a right to beg. The real poor in this world, the ones who deserve assistance and compassion, are the ones who, because of age or illness, are unable to support themselves with the labor of their own hands. All the rest have an obligation to work, and if they choose not to and go hungry, then too bad for them. Wait, where is Woodboy Tummy? Probably right here, because he's made to look like he's a little wooden boy. He was crafted to look so probably right here. Probably. Sorry about that. Allergies. So sorry that you guys had to hear my sneeze. It's not as bad as Sneezy from Snow White, but still pretty loud. Okay, but honestly, yeah, I can see what Carlo Collati's talking about, and I mean, I work a job, so I try and keep busy, and I try to earn my days off and earn the money for things. Bless you, thank you. There's a fun fact about sneezes, but I'm pretty sure I've already gone over it. If not, I'll go over it in another live stream because we got to read about Pinocchio. Alrighty, then too bad for them. Just then, a sweaty, breathless man came slogging down the road, pulling 2 brimming carts of coal all by himself with great effort. Judging him to be a kind man by the look on his face, Pinocchio approached, eyes downcast with shame, and said meekly, "Would you be so kind as to give me a nickel? For I feel I'm dying of hunger." "I won't just give you 1 nickel," replied the coalman. "I'll give you 4 if you help me pull these 2 carts of coal to my house." "I'm astonished," replied the puppet as if offended. "For your information, I've never served as a donkey. I've never pulled a cart." "Good for you," replied the coalman. "In that case, my boy, if you're really dying of hunger, eat 2 big slices of your pride and take care not to get indigestion." I mean, fair enough. After a few minutes, a brickslayer passed by, carrying a hod of mortar over his shoulder. "Would you give a nickel, kind sir, to a poor boy who is yawning from hunger?" "Gladly," replied the mason. "Help me carry this mortar, and instead of 1 nickel, I'll give you 5. "But mortar is heavy," replied Pinocchio, "and I don't want to work hard." "If you don't want to work hard, my boy, then have fun yawning. I hope it makes you happy." In less than half an hour, another 20 people passed, and Pinocchio begged alms from all of them, but all replied, "Aren't you ashamed? Instead of being an idler on the street, why don't you look for some work instead, and learn to earn your bread?" At last there came a good little woman carrying 2 jugs of water. "Good woman, would you allow me to take a sip of water from your jug?" asked Pinocchio, who was burning with thirst. "Go ahead and drink, my boy," said the little woman, setting down the 2 jugs. After drinking like a sponge, Pinocchio mumbled as he wiped his mouth, "I've quenched my thirst. If only I could satisfy my hunger so easy." The good little woman, hearing these words, added at once, "If you help me carry 1 of these jugs home, I'll give you a nice piece of bread." Pinocchio looked at the jug but didn't say either yes or no. "And along with the bread, I'll give you a nice plate of cauliflower dressed with oil and vinegar." Pinocchio took another look at the jug, but didn't say either yes or no. "And after the cauliflower, I'll give you a nice bonbon with a sweet rosewater filling." A bonbon is basically like a pastry with a filling. Usually they're like full of chocolate, but I mean this one's full of sweet rose water. I can't speak English. I've actually had a rosewater macaron before. It's certainly an interesting taste, very floral. The temptation of this final delicacy was too much for Pinocchio to resist, so he made up his mind and said, "All right, I'll carry the jug to your house." The jug was too heavy for the puppet to carry in his arms, and so he resigned himself to carrying it on the top of his head. When they reached her house, the good little woman sat Pinocchio down at a table that was already set, and placed before him the bread, the dressed cauliflower, and the bonbon. Pinocchio didn't eat. He devoured. His stomach was like an apartment that had been vacant for 5 months. When his ferocious hunger pain began gradually to subside, he lifted his head to thank his benefactress. But no sooner did he see her face than he let out a prolonged "Oh!" of amazement, and sat there enchanted, his eyes wide, his fork in midair, his mouth full of bread and cauliflower. "What are you so amazed about?" the good woman said, laughing. "It's just," stammered Pinocchio, it's just that you look like, you remind me. Yes, 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 the same voice, the same eyes, the same hair. Yes, 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 you have sky blue hair too, like her. My little fairy, oh, my little fairy, tell me it's really you. Don't make me cry anymore. If you only knew, I've cried so much, I've suffered so much." As he spoke these words, sobbing copiously, Pinocchio dropped down to the floor and threw his arms around the knees of that mysterious little woman. Sorry. So once again, the fairy with the sky blue hair comes through. Because in part 2 previously, she was dead before when Pinocchio was trying to escape the murderers. All right. Chapter 25. At first, the good little woman was about to say she was not the little fairy with sky blue hair, but realizing she had been found out and not wanting to pretend any longer, she decided to admit the truth, saying to Pinocchio, "You scamp of a puppet! How did you know it was me?" "It was my great love for you. That's what told me." "You remember, do you? You left me a girl, and now you find me a woman. So grown up, I could almost be your mother. And that gladdens my heart, because now instead of my sister, I'll call you my mother. For so long I have been yearning to have a mother like other children. But how did you manage to grow up so fast?" "It's a secret." "Tell me how. I'd like to grow up a little too. Don't you see? I'm about as tall as a piece of cheese." I mean, I've seen massive, some cheeses are done pretty big. But yeah, as big as a piece of cheese, that's kind of weird. Fairy godmother. A fairy mother with the sky blue hair, technically, but I mean, also technically, you're not wrong. Now that just makes me wonder if she knows Cinderella's fairy godmother, or the 13 wise woman who christened Sleeping Beauty. It would be cool, though, to see them all meet. Anyway. About as tall as a piece of cheese. The click of fairy. Maybe. Technically speaking, though, if we wanted to get technical, it could also be spelled this way, and well, let's just say back in the old days, fairies weren't all sugar and sweetness. I think I've gone over fairies at one point in the live stream. Anyway, okay, as tall as a piece of cheese. "But you can't grow," replied the fairy. "Why not?" "Because puppets never grow. They are born as puppets, they live as puppets, and they die as puppets." "Oh, I'm sick of always being just a puppet," shouted Pinocchio, smacking himself on the forehead. "It's about time I grew up too and became a man." "And you will, if you can earn it." "Really? How can I earn it?" "It's the easiest thing in the world. Just practice being a proper boy." "But aren't I one already?" "Not at all. Proper boys are obedient, and you, on the other hand—" "I never obey." "Proper boys take pleasure in study and in work, while I, on the other hand, am always an idler and a vagabond. Proper boys always tell the truth, and I'm always telling lies. Proper boys like going to school, and school gives me a stomachache, but from now on, I'm going to change my life. Promise me?" I promise. I want to become a proper boy. I want to be a comfort to my daddy. Where can my poor daddy be now? I don't know. Will I ever be lucky enough to see him and hug him again? I think so. Indeed, I am sure of it. They had a recent horror show about Tooth Fairy. I mean, ironically, I saw a Pinterest post where it's like Tooth Fairies are the smaller, more benevolent version. Like they're the cousins of the larger and more intimidating Bone Fairies. So I mean, technically ain't wrong, but I mean, I'm picky about what horror I watch. Let's see. Good morning, lovely hair, band lady Persephone. Thanks. Brush my hair, so welcome. Reading the story of Pinocchio, and he's finally found the little fairy with sky blue hair, though she's not so little anymore. She is grown into a woman, a beautiful woman. Morning snack. At most for a morning snack, I've had Skittles and tea. But I digress. Anyway. Sorry. On hearing these words, Pinocchio was nearly beside himself with happiness, so much so that he grabbed the fairy's hands and began fervently kissing them. Lifting his face and looking lovingly at her, he asked, "So tell me, dear mother, it isn't true that you are dead?" "It would seem I'm not," replied the fairy, smiling. "If you only knew how miserable and choked up I was when I read 'Here lies'." "I do know. That's why I've forgiven you. The sincerity of your grief showed me that you had a good heart, and with good-hearted children, even if they are a bit naughty and have some bad habits, there's always some hope. Hope that they'll mend their ways. I mean, that's why I came all the way here to look for you. I'll be your mother." "Oh, how wonderful!" shouted Pinocchio, jumping for joy. "And you'll obey me and always do what I tell you to do." "Gladly, gladly, gladly." "And tomorrow," added the fairy, "you'll start going to school." Skittles and tea sound good. Yeah, this is actually a pumpkin spice tea. It kind of smells like walnuts. My mom said it had an interesting flavor, but I mean, it tastes like pumpkin spice to me. And I like pumpkin spice. Pinocchio suddenly grew less cheerful. "And you'll choose an art or a trade of your liking." Pinocchio grew serious. "What are you muttering under your breath?" asked the fairy in an angry tone. "I was saying," whimpered the puppet, "that it seems by now a little late for me to start school." "No, siree. Keep in mind that it's never too late to learn and to educate ourselves." "But I don't want to do any art or any trade." "Why not?" "Because work seems tiring." So far it is. I'm reading this story to you guys. We're on the last part, the last section of Pinocchio's story. Because work seems tiring. It is. It's kind of the point, but I mean, it's worth it. "Dear boy," said the fairy, "people who talk that way almost always end up either in a prison or a poorhouse. For your information, everyone, whether they're born rich or poor, is obliged to do something, to keep busy, to work. Woe to anyone who yields to idleness. Idleness is a dreadful disease and must be treated at once, starting in childhood. If not, it will be too late by the time we grow up." These words touched Pinocchio's heart, and he quickly lifted his head and said to the fairy, "I'll go to school. I'll work. I'll do everything you tell me because, well, I've grown tired of living the life of a puppet, and I want to become a boy at any cost. You promised, right?" "I did indeed. Now it's up to you." Chapter 26. Sorry. Got an itch. The next day, Pinocchio went to the local school. Imagine those little scamps seeing a puppet come to their school. They couldn't stop laughing. They played one trick after another on him. One snatched his cap. One yanked his little jacket from behind. One tried to draw a big mustache under his nose in ink. And one even tried to tie strings to his hands and feet to make him dance. For a while, Pinocchio maintained his composure and kept his distance. But finally, feeling his patience running out, he turned to the ones who were pestering him and making sport of him the most, and he told them sternly, "Watch out, boys! I didn't come here to be the butt of your jokes. I respect others and I want to be respected. Bravo, you dunce! You speak like a printed book, howled the rascals, falling over with laughter, and one of them, the cheekiest of the bunch, reached out his hand intending to seize the puppet by the end of his nose. But he wasn't quick enough. Pinocchio stuck his legs out under the table and gave him a kick to the shins. Ouch! What hard feet! Cried the boy, rubbing the bruise the puppet had given him. And what elbows! Even harder than his feet, said another, who in return for one of his rude tricks had received an elbow in the belly. The fact is that after that kick and that elbow, Pinocchio swiftly gained the admiration and the sympathy of all the boys in school. They all took a heartfelt liking to him and began showering him with affection. And even the teacher boasted about him, for he could see that Pinocchio was attentive, hardworking, intelligent, always the first to arrive at school and the last to get out of his seat at the end of the day. His only fault was knocking about too many of his schoolmates. Among them were a bunch of rogues notorious for their lack of interest in studying or doing well in school. His teacher warned him every day, and even the good fairy told him over and over again, "Watch out, Pinocchio. Sooner or later those snotty schoolmates of yours will end up causing you to lose all love for learning, and they might, just might, get you into some big trouble." "Don't worry," replied the puppet, shrugging and tapping his index finger on his forehead as if to say, "There's a lot of good sense in here." Sorry, I don't know that motion. Just, yeah. He's learning. He's getting better. He is trying to. That has got to count for something. Okay. Then one fine day, as he was walking to school, he happened to run into his usual flock of friends. As they approached, they said, "Have you heard the big news?" "No." "A shark as big as a mountain has appeared nearby the sea." "Really?" "We're going to the beach to see it. You want to come too?" "Not me. I want to go to school." "Who cares about school? We can go to school tomorrow. One day more or less of school, we'll still be the same old jackasses." "But what will the teacher say?" "The teacher can say whatever he likes. He's paid to spend his days grumbling." "And my mother?" "Mothers never know anything," replied those rogues. Jeez. Yeah, I'm just wondering. The fairy with the sky blue hair is very sweet and she has the patience of a mother. I'm just wondering if she still has some of those ancient fae roots, because mothers never know anything. Mothers for the most part, if they are good and honest, know a lot. Like my mom. I know my mom knows how to make the best scalloped potatoes in the world, so yeah. I don't like these rogues. "You know what I'll do?" said Pinocchio. "I want to see that shark for certain reasons of my own, but I'll go see it after school." "Silly fool," retorted one of the flock. "Do you think that a fish of that magnitude will hang around until it suits you? As soon as he gets bored, he'll blunder off to someplace else, and that will be that." "How long does it take to get from here to the beach?" the puppet asked. "We can be there and back in an hour." "Then let's go, and the last one there's a rotten egg." The starting signal having thus been given, that flock of rogues began to sprint across the field, with their books and notebooks under their arms, and Pinocchio was always in the lead. He seemed to have wings on his feet. Every now and then he turned back to taunt his friends, who were a considerable distance behind him. Seeing them panting and gasping and covered with dust, their tongues hanging out, he laughed at them heartily. The wretch in that moment had no idea what frights and what terrible troubles laid in store for him. So yeah, if you guys thought the trouble ended in part 2 where Pinocchio got hung, chased by assassins, and nearly got carried off by Undertaker rabbits, yeah, we ain't out of the woods yet. Chapter 27. When he reached the shore, Pinocchio began scanning the sea, but he didn't see any shark. The sea was perfectly smooth like a giant mirror. "The shark, where is it?" he asked, turning to his companions. "Maybe he went to breakfast," replied one of his companions, laughing. "Or maybe he went to bed for a little nap," added another, laughing even harder. From these absurd answers and their silly cackling, Pinocchio gathered that his schoolmates had played a cruel trick on him. His feelings hurt. Pinocchio said to them in a furious voice, "Now what? What have you gained by making me believe that fib about the shark?" "We've gained plenty," the rogues replied in chorus. "Such as? We've made you skip school and come with us. Aren't you ashamed of being so punctual and hard-working every day at school? Aren't you ashamed of studying as much as you do? What difference does it make to you if I study? It makes a big difference, because you make us look bad to the teacher." "How?" "Because the kids who study always make the kids who don't want to study like us look bad by comparison, and we don't want to look bad. We have some self-respect too." "If you have self-respect, then why don't you study?" These rogues. Mothers don't know anything. Don't like these rogues. Grr. "So what do I have to do to make you happy? You have to be fed up, like us, with the school and the lessons and the teacher, our three great enemies. And what if I want to keep studying? We'll never look you in the face again, and we'll make you pay the first chance we get." "To tell you the truth, you almost make me laugh," said the puppet, shaking his head. "Hey, Pinocchio!" shouted the biggest of the boys, walking right up to him. "You better not act like a tough guy here. You better not act so cocky, because you might not be afraid of us, but we're not afraid of you either. And don't forget, there's one of you and 7 of us." "7? Like the 7 deadly sins," said Pinocchio, laughing. "Did you hear that? He insulted all of us. He called us deadly sins." "Pinocchio, you better apologize or else." "Nanny, nanny, boo, boo," said the puppet, thumbing his nose to mock them. Thumbing, meaning to do that. "Pinocchio, you'll be sorry. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo. We'll beat you like a donkey. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo. We'll send you home with a broken nose." "Good luck. He is made out of extremely hard wood. I'd like to see you try. If anything, you're going to break your hands trying to break his nose. So, Nanny, nanny, boo, boo. "You'll get the boo-boo now," shouted the boldest of those rogues. "Here's a taste to start, and you can save the rest for supper." And as he said that, he punched Pinocchio in the head. But it was tit for tat, as the saying goes, because the puppet, as might be expected, answered at once with a counterpunch, and from then on, the battle became general and fierce. Though Pinocchio was alone, he defended himself like a hero. He used those rock-hard wooden feet of his so well that his enemies were forced to keep a respectful distance. Wherever his feet could reach and strike, they left souvenir bruises. At one point, the boys, vexed at being unable to match the puppet in hand-to-hand combat, thought it wise to resort to projectiles. They untied their bundle of school books and began flinging them at Pinocchio, their spelling books, their grammar books, Thor's 1,000 Popular Tales, Bacchini's Memoirs of a Chick, and a couple of books by a fellow named Collodi. Author self-insert, or at least a reference to the author, so good on you, Carla Collodi. You tapped at that fourth wall like a fish tank. Some books by a fellow named Collodi. I don't know, I think it's clever. And it's kind of funny. The way he just casually taps at that fourth wall as though it were a fish tank. Okay, and still others, but the puppet, who was sharp-eyed and quick-witted, always managed to duck in time, so that all the books sailed over his head and dropped into the sea. Think of the fish, believing that those books were something good to eat. Whole schools of fish swarmed to the water's surface, but after sampling a page here and a front piece there, they spat them right back out, making the sort of face that seemed to say, "This stuff is not from us. We are much accustomed to much better fare." Meanwhile, as the battle was growing fiercer and fiercer, a large crab, who had crawled ever so slowly out of the water and onto the beach, shouted in an ugly voice that sounded like a trombone with a cold, "Cut it out, you incorrigible rascals! These fistfights between boys and boys never end well. They always end in disaster." Poor crab, he might as well have been preaching to the wind, and indeed that rogue Pinocchio turned and scowled at him, saying rudely, "Oh, hush, you tiresome crab! You're better off sucking on some lozenges to cure that cold of yours, or else go to bed and try to sweat it out." By this time, the boys, who had finished throwing all their own books, spotted the up its bundle of books lying nearby, and quick as a wink they snatched them up. Among these books was one that had a thick hard cover and vellum on the spine and corners. It was called Treatise on Arithmetic. I'll let you imagine how heavy it was. Pretty heavy. One of the rascals snatched at that volume and, aiming at Pinocchio's head, flung it with all his might. But instead of hitting the puppet, it struck the head of one of his companions, who turned white as a washed sheet. All he said before collapsing onto the sand were these words, "Oh, mother, help me, for I am dying!" Karma, mother hugger. That's what you get for saying mothers don't know anything. That's what you get. At the sight of that dead-looking boy, his frightened companions took to their heels. In the blink of an eye, they were out of sight. But Pinocchio stayed behind, and though he, too, from grief and fright, was more dead than alive, nevertheless, he ran to soak his handkerchief in sea-water and began to bathe his poor schoolmate's temples. Pinocchio sobbed and despaired and called his schoolmate's name and said, "Eugenio, my poor Eugenio, open your eyes and look at me. Why aren't you answering? I'm not the one, who hurt you like this. Believe me, it wasn't me. Open your eyes, Eugenio. If you keep your eyes closed, you'll make me die too. Oh, God, how can I go back home now? How can I dare face my good mother? What will become of me? Where will I run to? Where will I hide? Oh, how much better it would have been, 1,000 times better, if I had gone to school today. Why did I listen to those schoolmates who are the bane of my life? The teacher even told me so, and my mother told me over and over, beware of bad company. But I'm too stubborn, too headstrong. I always let them talk, and then just do as I please, and I end up paying for it. So for as long as I have been in this world, I have never had 15 minutes of peace. Oh, God, what will become of me? What will become of me? What will become of me?" And Pinocchio kept crying and bawling and hitting himself in the head and calling poor Eugenio by name, when he suddenly heard the muffled sounds of approaching footsteps. He turned, and there stood 2 policemen. "What are you doing here, stretched out on the ground?" "I'm helping the schoolmate of mine." "Has he fallen ill?" "It looks that way." "He isn't ill," said one of the policemen, leaning down to look closely at Eugenio. "This boy has been wounded in the temple." "Who wounded him?" "Not me," sputtered the puppet, who could barely breathe. "If it wasn't you, then who did wound him?" "Not me," Pinocchio said again. "And what was he wounded with?" "With this book." "And whose book might this be?" "Mine." "That's enough. We don't need to know anything else. Get up right now and come along with us." "But I—" "Come with us." "But I'm innocent." "Come with us." Before leaving, the policeman called out some fishermen, who just at that moment happened to be passing by, and said to them, "We are giving you this boy who has been wounded in the head. Carry him home and take care of him. Tomorrow we'll come by and see him." Then they turned back to Pinocchio and put him between them, and commanded in soldierly voices, "Forward, march! On the double, or you'll be sorry!" Not needing to be told twice, Pinocchio began walking down that path which led to town. The poor devil barely knew what had hit him. He thought he must be dreaming, and what an awful dream it was. He was beside himself. He was seeing double. His legs were wobbly, his tongue was stuck to the roof of his mouth, and he couldn't spit out a single word. And yet, through that stupor and bewilderment, one very sharp thorn was piercing his heart. I mean, the thought of having to walk, escorted by policemen, past the windows of the good fairy's house. He would have rather died. They reached the end of the town, and were about to enter when a rough gust of wind lifted Pinocchio's cap from his head and blew it 10 paces away. "Would you permit me," the puppet asked the policeman, "to retrieve my hat?" "Go ahead, but be quick about it." The puppet went and picked up his cap, but instead of putting it back on his head, he put it between his teeth and started running full tilt towards the seashore. He was as fast as a bullet. The policeman, seeing they would have a hard time catching up, sent a dog after him, a great big mastiff dog who had won first prize in all the dog races. Pinocchio ran, and the dog ran faster. Soon people leaning out their windows and flocking to the road, eager to see the outcome of a furious sprint, but their curiosity went unsatisfied, because between them, Pinocchio and that mastiff kicked up such a cloud of dust that after a few minutes, nobody could see anything. Chapter 28. Again, Pinocchio is trying, but it's easier said than done. Sorry, I need to stretch. Okay. Chapter 28. During that desperate race, a terrible moment came. A moment in which Pinocchio thought he was lost. You see, Wingfoot, that was the mastiff dog's name, after running and running, had almost caught him. Let's just say that the puppet could hear, a handbreadth away, the labor panting of that nasty beast, and he could even feel the hot blasts of his smelly breath. As luck would have it, the beach was now close at hand, and the sea just a few steps away. As soon as he gained the beach, the puppet leapt magnificently into the air, as a bullfrog might have done, and landed with a splash in the water. Wingfoot, however, tried to stop, but his momentum carried him into the water as well. Since the poor wretch didn't know how to swim, he began flailing about with his paws to stay afloat, but the more he flailed, the more his head went under. When his head resurfaced, the poor dog's eyes were bulging with terror, and barking, he cried, "I'm drowning! I'm drowning!" "Drop dead!" replied Pinocchio from afar, seeing that by now he was safe from danger. "Help me, dear Pinocchio! Save me from death!" At that pitiful cry, the puppet, who deep down had a very good heart, was moved to compassion, and he turned to the dog and said, "If I help save you, do you promise to stop bothering and chasing me?" "I promise! I promise! Hurry up, for heaven's sake! If you wait another half minute, I'll be as good as dead!" Pinocchio hesitated a little, but then he remembered how many times his daddy had told him that a good deed is never lost, and he swam over to Wingfoot, took hold of his tail and with both hands, and pulled him safe and sound onto the dry sand of the beach. The poor dog could no longer stand. Without meaning to, he had swallowed so much salt water that he was as swollen as a balloon. The puppet, however, not wanting to take any chances, thought it wise to throw himself back into the sea, and as he swam away from the shore, he shouted to his rescued friend, "Goodbye, Wingfoot! Happy travels and all my best to you and yours!" "Goodbye, Pinocchio," replied the dog. "A thousand thanks for saving me from death. You've done me a good turn, and in this world one good turn deserves another. If the occasion arises, you never know." Pinocchio kept on swimming, keeping the shore always in sight. Finally, he felt he had come to a safe place, and glancing at the shore, he saw among the rocks a sort of cave, from which was rising a very long plume of smoke. "In that cave," Pinocchio thought to himself, "there must be a fire. So much the better. I'll go dry off and warm up, and then we'll see what happens." Having made his decision, he approached the rocks, but as he was getting ready to climb out, he felt something beneath him in the water that rose and rose and rose and lifted him into the air. Immediately he tried to get free, but it was too late. To his great astonishment, he found himself caught in a large fishing net, amid a swarm of fish of every size and shape who were thrashing and struggling like doomed souls. At the same time, he saw, emerging from the cave, a fisherman so ugly that he looked like a sea monster. Instead of hair, a thick bush of green grass grew atop his head. Green was his skin, green his eyes, green the long, long beard that hung down to here. He looked like a big lizard standing on its hind legs. The fisherman pulled the net out of the sea. He shouted happily, "Blessed Providence! Once again I can stuff myself to the gills with fish." "Lucky for me, I'm not a fish," Pinocchio thought to himself, plucking up his courage. The fisherman carried the net loaded with fish into his cave, a dark and smoky cave in the middle of which a big skillet of oil was sizzling, giving off such a whiff of candle snuff as to take your breath away. I'm not sure what candle snuff might be, and just to make sure that my laptop doesn't die on me as I'm doing this live stream, I'm going to plug it in. Terribly sorry, guys. There's my library. Well, part of my library anyway. There's another half of it there. Okay, there we go. This should work. Okay. Okay. The fisherman carried the net loaded with fish and... Oh, I already read that part. I'm sorry. "Now, let's see what fishes we've caught," said the green fisherman, thrusting into the net a hand so huge it looked like a basker's peel. He pulled out a handful of goatfish. And I'm not sure if these are actually real fish or not, so I'll have to research that later. I think they might be real, but again, I'm not sure. And this is a fairy tale, so in fairy tales, anything goes. Tasty, these goatfish, he said, eyeing them and sniffing them with pleasure. After sniffing them, he tossed them into a bucket with no water in it. Then he repeated the same process several more times, and as he plucked the other fishes out, his mouth began to water, and he said with glee, Tasty these hake, scrumptious these mullet, delectable these sole, choice these sea bass, cute these anchovies with their heads on. As you can guess, the hake, the mullet, the sole, the sea bass, and the anchovies all went pell-mell into the bucket to keep the goatfish company. The last thing remaining in the net was Pinocchio. As soon as the fisherman had plucked out Pinocchio, his big green eyes bulged with astonishment. And he yelled, as though frightened, What manner of fish is this? I don't recall ever eating this sort of fish. He looked him over carefully again, and after scrutinizing him from every angle, he declared, I know, this must be a sea slug. Mortified at being mistaken for a slug, Pinocchio replied indignantly, A slug indeed! You better be careful how you treat me. For your information, I am a puppet. A puppet? Replied the fisherman. To be honest, I'm not familiar with the puppet fish species. So much the better. I'll eat you with greater relish. Eat me? But can't you understand that I'm not a fish? Can't you hear that I speak and reason like you? That's absolutely true, agreed the fisherman. And since I can see you are a fish who is lucky enough to be able to speak and reason like me, I will indeed treat you with due respect. Which means what? As a sign of my friendship and extraordinary esteem, I'll allow you to choose how you would like to be cooked. Would you prefer to be fried in a skillet, or would you rather be stewed in a pot with tomato sauce? I mean, that's kind of an interesting way to show friendship and extraordinary esteem, buddy. Yeah, that's a little weird. Just a little bit. Then you'll have to go without me. Anyway, so, looks like I won't be running errands. Oh well. At least you guys get the story, and I enjoy reading these to you, so I should have just done it sooner or another day, but anyway. It doesn't matter, it's in the past already. But yeah, that's weird. I mean, fairy tales have been known. It's like, okay, antagonist. Hypothetically speaking, if you were going to punish a person, how would you do it? And antagonists have ended up choosing their own punishment. So, I mean, maybe it's a callback, but still, choosing how you'd like to be cooked. Yee. To be honest, replied Pinocchio, if I had to choose, I'd prefer to be set free instead, so I could go back home. Surely you jest! Do you think I'd miss out on tasting a rare fish? It isn't every day you find a puppet fish in these waters. Trust me, I'll fry you up in a skillet together with all the other fishes, and you'll end up liking it. It's always comforting to be fried in company. After his speech, the unhappy Pinocchio began to cry and scream and plead. As he cried, he said, How much better it would have been if I had gone to school today. I listened to my schoolmates, and now I'm paying for it. Boo-hoo-hoo. And again, yes, he says that. Not exaggerating. And since he was wriggling like an eel and trying incredibly hard to slither out of the green fisherman's clutches, the fisherman took a nice length of reed, tied Pinocchio's hands and legs together like sausage ends, and threw him into the bucket with the others. Then, taking out a battered wooden tray heaped with flour, he began flouring all those fish, and after he floured them, he threw them one by one into the sizzling skillet. The first to dance in the boiling oil were the poor goatfish. The hake were next, then the sea bass, then the mullet, then the sole, then the anchovies. And finally, it was Pinocchio's turn. Seeing himself so close to death, and such a nasty death at that, he began trembling so violently from fear that he had no voice or breath left for begging. The poor boy begged with his eyes. The poor boy was begging with his eyes, but the green fisherman, not even noticed, rolled him 5 or 6 times in the flour, covering him so thoroughly from head to toe that he looked like a plaster puppet. Then he took him by the head and... I like that cliffhanger. Chapter 29. Chapter 29. Just as the fisherman was on the verge of tossing Pinocchio into the skillet, a large dog entered the cave, lured there by the pungent, appetizing aroma of frying fish. As you do, because who doesn't like fried fish? Fried fish is yummy. "Get out!" shouted the fisherman menacingly, still holding the flour-covered puppet in his hand. But the poor dog was hungry as 4 dogs, and his whimpering and tail wagging seemed to say, "Give me a bite of fresh fish, and I'll leave you in peace." "I said, get out!" repeated the fisherman, and pulled back his foot to give the dog a kick. But this dog, who, when he was truly hungry, did not take kindly to being trifled with, and he started growling at the fisherman, showing his terrible fangs. At that moment, a little voice cried out faintly in the cave, "Save me, Wingfoot! If you don't save me, I'm going to fry!" The dog recognized Pinocchio's voice at once, and to his great astonishment, he realized it was coming from that flour-coated bundle the fisherman held in his hand. What could he do? He lunged mightily into the air, seized the flour-covered puppet in his mouth, and ran out of the cave, holding it gently between his teeth. Quick as a wink, he was gone. The fisherman, infuriated to see a fish that he would have happily eaten snatched from his hand, tried to chase the dog, but after taking a few steps, he burst in a fit of coughing and had to turn back. Asthma saves the day! Or a cold, or whatever. I say that as a joke, but you'll quickly see that it's also a reference. Meanwhile, having found once more the path that led to the village, Wingfoot stopped. And Brillo, don't put your paws on my laptop. My cat Brillo is here. He's very fat, he's very gray, and he's very fluffy. Super fluffy. Anyway, but don't put your paws on my laptop, please. I'm asking you nicely. Anyway. Okay. Meanwhile, having found once more the path that led to the village, Wingfoot stopped and set Pinocchio gently on the ground. "I can't thank you enough," said the puppet. "No need to," replied the dog. "You saved me, and one good turn deserves another. After all, we must help one another in this world." "But how on earth did you end up in that cave?" "I was lying on the beach, more dead than alive, when the aroma of frying fish wafted in the wind. That aroma whetted my appetite, and I tracked it down. If I had arrived a minute later—" "Don't even say it!" yelled Pinocchio, still trembling with fear. "Don't even say it! If you arrived a minute later, then I'd be good and fried by now, eaten and digested and eek! I shudder at the thought." Wingfoot, laughing, held out his right paw to the puppet, who shook it long and hard as a sign of their close friendship, and then they went their separate ways. The dog took the road back to the village. Pinocchio, on his own again, approached a nearby hut where a little old man in the doorway was sunning himself, and asked, "Tell me, kind sir, do you know anything about a poor boy named Eugenio who was wounded in the head?" "The boy was brought by some fishermen to his hut, but now—" "Now he's dead!" interjected Pinocchio with great sorrow. "No, now he's alive. He's already gone home." "Really and truly?" shouted the puppet, jumping for joy. "So the wound wasn't serious?" "Well, it could have been awfully serious, even fatal," replied the little old man, "because someone flung a big hardbound book at his head." "And who flung it?" One of his schoolmates, a certain Pinocchio." "And who is this Pinocchio?" the puppet asked, playing dumb. "Folks say he's a good-for-nothing boy, a vagabond, a real hothead." "Slander! It's all slander!" "And you've acquainted with this Pinocchio?" "I've seen him," replied the puppet. "And what is your estimation of him?" asked the little old man. "To me he seems like a fine, upstanding lad. Really likes to study, does what he's told, loves his daddy and his family." As the puppet was telling all these lies with a straight face, he touched his nose and realized that it had grown more than a handbreadth of a length. Suddenly afraid, he began to shout, "Pay no attention, kind sir, to all the good things I've been saying about him, because I know Pinocchio perfectly well, and I too can assure you that he really is a lazy, good-for-nothing boy who doesn't like to do as he's told and runs around with his schoolmates like a scamp." As soon as he said these words, his nose shortened back to its natural length, just as it was before. "And why are you all white like that?" "I can explain. I accidentally rubbed against a wall that had just been whitewashed," replied the puppet, ashamed to admit that he had been floured like a fish in preparation for frying in a skillet. "And what have you done with your jacket, your pants, your cap?" "I ran into some thieves and they stripped me. Say, kind sir, you don't by any chance have any scraps of clothing you could give me so I could return home?" My boy, as far as clothes go, I've got nothing but a little sack I keep my lupini beans in. If you want it, take it. It's right over there. Don't know what lupini beans are either. Maybe they're the same type of bean that we're used to grow Jack's beanstalk. I apologize for the shouting. Pinocchio didn't need to be told twice. He quickly took the lupini sack, which was empty, and after using some scissors to cut a small hole in the bottom and two in the sides, he put it on like a shirt. And dressed in this light fashion, he headed back to the village. But on the way, he felt ill at ease. So ill at ease that he took one step backwards for every 2 steps forward. All the while, he was talking to himself. How can I ever show my face to the good fairy? What will she say when she sees me? Will she forgive me for the second escapade? I bet she won't forgive me. Oh, she certainly won't forgive me, and it serves me right because I'm a rascal, always making promises to change my ways and never keeping them. He arrived in the village after dark, and because the weather was bad, the rain was coming down in buckets. He went straight to the fairy's house and resolved to knock on the door and ask to be let in. But once he got there, his courage deserted him, and instead of knocking, he ran about 20 paces away. Then he approached the door a second time, but did nothing. He approached a third time. Still he did nothing. The fourth time he took the knocker in his hand, trembling, and tapped it softly. He waited, and finally, after half an hour, a top-floor window opened. The house was 4 stories high, and out leaned a large snail with a glowing lantern on her head, and she said, "Who is here at this hour?" "Is the fairy home?" the puppet asked. "The fairy is sleeping and doesn't wish to be disturbed, but who's there?" "It's me." "Me who?" "Pinocchio." "Pinocchio who?" "The puppet, the one who lives with the fairy." "Oh, I see," said the snail. "Wait right here. I'll come straight down to let you in." "Please hurry, for pity's sake. I'm dying of cold." "My boy, I am a snail, and snails never hurry." Meanwhile, an hour passed, then 2, but the door did not open, and so Pinocchio, trembling from being cold, afraid and wet as a drowned rat, gathered his courage and knocked once more, louder this time. After the second knock, a window opened on the 3rd floor, and the same snail leaned out. "Oh, pretty little snail," shouted Pinocchio from the street. "I've been waiting for 2 hours, and 2 hours on such an awful night feel longer than 2 years. For heaven's sakes, please hurry." "My boy," the creature replied calmly and coolly, "my boy, I am a snail, and snails never hurry." The window closed again. Soon the bells chimed at midnight, then 1 o'clock, and then 2, but the door remained shut. Losing his patience, Pinocchio grabbed the door knocker angrily, intending to bang it hard enough to shake the whole building. But the door knocker, which had been made of iron, suddenly turned into a live eel, which slithered out of his hands and disappeared into the torrent of water that was coursing down the street. "So that's how it is!" shouted Pinocchio, blinded now by rage. "The knocker may have disappeared, but I can just knock with my feet." After stepping back a little, he let fly with a tremendous kick. The blow so hard, in fact, that his foot sank halfway into the wood, and when he tried to pull it back out, he couldn't budge, for his foot was stuck in that door like a hammered nail. Imagine poor Pinocchio. He had to spend the rest of the night with one foot on the ground and the other up in the air. In the morning, near dawn, the door finally opened. That good creature, the snail, had only taken 9 hours to descend from the 4th floor to the front door. It must be said that she had worked up a sweat. What's with your foot? What's that foot of yours doing and stuck in the door?" she asked the puppet with a laugh. "It was an accident, oh pretty little snail. Can you help release me from this torture?" "My boy, this calls for a carpenter, and I've never been much of a carpenter." Okay. "Please beg the fairy on my behalf." "The fairy is sleeping and doesn't wish to be disturbed." "But what am I supposed to do, nailed to this door all day?" "Amuse yourself by counting the ants that pass by in the street." "At least please bring me something to eat. I'm wasting away." "At once," replied the snail, and indeed 3.5 hours later
later, she returned with a silver tray on her head. On the tray was bread, a roast chicken, and 4 ripe apricots. "Here's the breakfast the fairy sends you," said the snail. The puppet rejoiced at the sight of that heavenly gift, but when he took a bite, his spirits plummeted, for the bread was plaster, the chicken cardboard, and the 4 apricots alabaster, all painted to look real. He wanted to weep, wanted to give himself up to despair. He wanted to throw that tray and everything on it away. But what he did instead, either from his great sorrow or his great hunger, was to faint. When he came to, he found himself stretched on a sofa, the fairy sitting next to him. "I forgive you this time, too," the fairy said, "but watch out. If you do this sort of thing to me again." Pinocchio promised up and down that he would study and would behave himself from then on, and he kept his word for the rest of the school year. Indeed, when the end of the year exams came, he got the highest marks of anyone in the school, and his behavior in general was judged so praiseworthy and satisfactory that the fairy, delighted, told him, "Tomorrow, your wish shall be granted at last." "What wish?" "Tomorrow, you'll stop being a puppet and become a proper boy." No one who wasn't there to see Pinocchio's joy at this long-awaited news can quite imagine it. All his friends and schoolmates were to be invited to the fairy's house the next morning for a grand breakfast to help celebrate the occasion, and the fairy had prepared 200 cups of coffee and milk and 400 buttered rolls, buttered inside and out. The next day promised to be a beautiful and joyous one. But, alas, in the lives of puppets, there's always some but that spoils everything. Dang it! It's like just when you think the happy ending's here, Carla Collati looks at you with a smile and says, "Is that so? Well, I have a bit of a plot twist for you. It'll be worth it in the end, I promise." And to the 3 watching, I wish you guys would speak. I mean, you don't have to, but I like reading your guys' thoughts as I read the story. And I mean, again, Pinocchio finally did graduate. He got the highest marks at the end of the school year exams. So, yeah. Chapter 30. Naturally, Pinocchio immediately asked the fairy's permission to go around town to make the invitations, and the fairy said, Go ahead, jeez. Go ahead and invite your friends to tomorrow's breakfast, but remember to come home before dark, okay?" "I promise to be back in an hour or so," replied the puppet. "Careful, Pinocchio. Children are quick to make promises, but they are often slow to keep them. But I'm not like other children. When I say something, I stick to it." "We'll see. If you don't, so much the worse for you." "What do you mean?" "I mean that children who ignore the advice of those who know best always get themselves into some kind of trouble." "As I know from experience," said Pinocchio, "but I'll never be guilty of such folly again." "We'll see if you're right." With that, the puppet said goodbye to the good fairy, who was a sort of mother to him, and sang and danced his way out of the house. In little more than an hour, all his friends had been invited. Some accepted quickly and eagerly. Others played hard to get at first, but when they heard about the rolls for dunking and the coffee and milk would be buttered even on the outside, they all ended up saying, "We're coming too, as a favor to you." Now, you need to know that among Pinocchio's schoolmate, his dearest and closest friend was a boy whose name was Romeo, but everyone called him by his nickname Lampwick, on account of his skinny, lanky build, as skinny as a fresh wick in a night lamp. His name was Romeo, eh? Any relation to the Romeo from Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare? I don't know, I just think it's kind of fun. Brillo, would you not rub against my laptop? The laptop is not something for you to rub upon, you silly gray cat. You silly gray cat. My goodness. You're so fat and fluffy. My goodness. Alrighty. So, yeah. Lampwick was the laziest and naughtiest boy in the whole school, but Pinocchio loved him dearly. In fact, he had gone straight to his house to look for him, to invite him to breakfast, but he couldn't find him. "Would you not rub your face against my book?" You're on camera. My goodness. Have you no manners? My goodness. I swear. My phone fell asleep. Yay. Okay. Okay. He went back once more. Lamphook wasn't there. He went back a third time, but again, no luck. How could he track him down? He looked there. He looked here. He looked there. Then finally, he saw him hiding under the porch of a farmer's house. What are you doing there? Pinocchio asked as he approached. I'm waiting to leave. Where are you going? Far, far, far away. Would you stop sniffing at my laptop? My goodness gracious. Why do you get to sniff at my laptop? Why you gotta be like this? Fluffy cat. Sorry, guys. But I was literally just sitting on my bed looking at me like, what are you doing? Okay. So, far, far, far away. And here I've been to your house 3 times looking for you. What do you want with me? Don't you know about the big event? Don't you know about my good fortune? What is it? Tomorrow, I'll stop being a puppet and become a boy like you, like all the others. I hope it makes you happy. Tomorrow, then, I'll expect you for breakfast at my house. But what if I would told you I was leaving tonight? At what time? Soon. Where are you going? I'm going to live in the most beautiful land on earth, a real paradise. And what's it called? It's called Toyland. Why don't you come too? Me? No way. Big mistake, Pinocchio. Believe me, if you don't come, you'll regret it. Where will you find a place that's better for us kids? There are no schools there. There are no teachers there. There are no books there. In that blessed land, no one ever studies. There isn't any school on Thursdays, and every week is made up of six Thursdays and 1 Sunday. Just think. The winter holidays start on the first day of January, and they end on the last day of December. Now that's my kind of place. That's how it should be in every civilized country. Objection, Your Honor, there are no books there. I wouldn't go there. You couldn't make me, because I love my books. I have a library growing. And, like, it's a rule. If I go to a used bookstore or a place that has books of any kind, I usually end up buying 1 or 2 books home. Like, the last time I went to 2 bookstores was up in my neck of the woods. I think I ended up with at least 68 new books then. Like, I spent so much money. But it was worth it. And just, yeah. So, no. You wouldn't catch me in Toyland. They don't have books, you uncultured heathens! Everyone loves a good book. Now, if it had books, a tea bar, and lots of cats, then I might be persuaded. But anyway, they have no books, so yeah, screw you, Toyland. I ain't going. I ain't going, and you can't make me. Sorry. Alrighty, so it should be in every civilized country. But how do people spend their days in Toyland? They spend them by playing and having fun from morning to night. Then at night they go to bed, and the next morning they start all over. What do you think? Said Pinocchio, nodding his head slightly as if to say, that's a life I too could enjoy. So, do you want to leave with me? Yes or no? Make up your mind. No, and again, no. I've promised my good fairy to become a proper boy, and I want to keep my word. In fact, since I see that the sun's going down, I must leave you at once and run off. Goodbye then, and happy travels. Where are you running in such a hurry? Home. My good fairy wants me back before dark. Wait another 2 minutes. I'm already running late. Just 2 minutes. What if the fairy yells at me? Let her yell. After she's had a good yell, she'll calm down, said that rascal Lampwick. Oh. Now I really do wonder if the blue fairy is still in touch with her fae roots. 'Cause I'm sorry, if I were a fairy and he had said that to me, to my face, I would have done a proper fairy punishment for him, and fairies notorious for giving very messed up punishments. Fitting, but still messed up punishments. Like one fairy at one point wanted to take her human toy's eyes and replace them with wood. Like if she had known that she would end up losing him to another human woman. It's like, if I had known you were going to go with a human woman, the first time we met, I would have taken your eyes and turned them to stone. So, yeah. Lampwick. Jeez. What? I'm reading. What, do you want out? Oh my goodness, Brillo. And how are you getting there? Are you leaving alone or with others? Alone? There'll be more than 100 of us kids. Are you traveling on foot? A coach will come by soon to pick me up and take me across the border to that happy country. I sure wish I could see that coach pass by now. Why? To see all of you leave together. Wait around a bit longer and you'll see it. No, I want to go home. Wait 2 more minutes. I've already lingered too long. The fairy will be worried about me. Poor fairy. I guess maybe she's scared you'll get eaten by bats. I don't think bats would want to eat a puppet. Puppets are made out of wood. Now, if Pinocchio had like leaves or like fruit hanging from him, then like maybe the bats would like gnaw on him a little, but only on the leafy, fruity parts. Okay, but tell me, Pinocchio said, are you really sure that in that country there are no schools at all? Not even the shadows of a school. And no teachers either? Not a single one. And you never have to study? Never, never, never. Brillo's looking at me. Hang on a sec. Terribly sorry, guys. I have to let Brillo out. Because he wants out of my bedroom. Yeah, I'm letting you out. My goodness. Stretch. There we go. Okay. Okay. Back. Oh, oops. Sorry. I have to get the laptop situated, so. Pinocchio. Pinocchio, you should have gone home to your fairy mom. Okay. Oh, what a splendid country, said Pinocchio, feeling his mouth begin to water. What a splendid country. I haven't ever been there, but I can picture it. Why don't you come too? It's pointless for you to tempt me. I've already promised my good fairy that I'd become a sensible boy, and I don't want to break my promise. Farewell, then, and give my best regards to the elementary schools, and the high schools too, if you pass them on the street. Farewell, Lampwick. Have a good trip, enjoy yourself, and think of your friends from time to time. Having said that, the puppet took 2 steps towards home. But then, stopping and turning back towards his friend, he asked, But are you really positive that every week is made of 6 Thursdays and 1 Sunday? Absolutely positive. And you're certain that vacations start on the first day of January and end on the last day of December? Absolutely certain. What a splendid country, repeated Pinocchio, so overwhelmed by delight that he spat. Then he made up his mind and he quickly added, Well, it really is goodbye. Happy travels. Farewell. When will you be leaving? Soon. I'm very nearly tempted to wait. But what about the fairy? At this point, I'm already running late. 1 hour more or less won't make any difference. Poor Pinocchio, what if the fairy yells at you? Never mind. I'll let her yell. After she's had a good yell, she'll calm down. Oh boy. I get that you're a kid, Pinocchio, but you should be better than this. You should have learned, but then again, he's still a kid. He is still a kid, and the whole point of this story is him growing and becoming a real boy. And just further proves the point that even someone who is working towards change can make mistakes and fall back on old habits, like me. On some occasions, I still refer to myself by my dead name, so I'm working on it, because I'm no longer that person. I'm Persephone now, so the reference. But at the same time, like, I shake my head, Pinocchio. You're making a bad choice. Jeez. If I were a fairy, I would have swatted him. I would have given him a gib smack and smacked him upside the head. It's like, jeez. Ay. But it also just shows the point that at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to choice. Like you can work to becoming a better person, and at the end of the day, you can still choose to continue to grow, or you can choose to fall back onto old habits. But again, oh boy, jeez, Pinocchio. It was already dark, pitch dark by the time they saw a small light moving in the distance, and they heard the sound of harness bells and the blare of a toy trumpet so faint and muffled that it sounded like the whine of a mosquito. "It's here!" shouted Lampa, getting to his feet. "What is?" asked Pinocchio in a soft voice. "The coach is coming to pick me up. So do you want to come? Yes or no?" "But is it really true," asked the puppet, "that children in that country are never required to study?" "Never, never, never." "What a splendid country! What a splendid country! What a splendid country!" Oh boy. Chapter 31. And I think there are some cats at my door. Again. It sounds like October and Cosmic, so I gotta let them in. Terribly sorry, guys. I remember Wolf for saying that with the way my stories go, whenever stuff like this happens, it's like being at a friend's house. Hello? Oh, hi, baby. Cosmic. No, Cosmic. My goodness. Oh, whoops. Almost stepped on the wire. Okay, there we go. Okay. Pinocchio. I love you, kid, but dang. Okay. Little Cosmic. Well, Cosmic came in for a visit, so okay. Little Cosmic. Hello, Persephone. Hi, Wolfer. I was just talking about you. I was just opening up the door to let the cats in. So, welcome to part 3. We're just at the part where Pinocchio, although he has strived to become a good boy and got the highest marks at the end of the school year exams in his class, and was going to be a good boy by tomorrow, he has just made a very poor choice and is going to Toyland. A place where there are no schools, no teachers, no books, and you can do whatever you want. And the weeks are made of 6 Thursdays and 1 Sunday. So yeah, you were this close, Pinocchio. This close. Dang. But yeah, I also said that I wouldn't go to Toyland. It has no books, so you won't catch me there. All right, we're getting to the end, because the end is consisted of 36 chapters. So the whole book, I mean, is 36 chapters anyway. Chapter 31. At last, the coach arrived, and it arrived without making the slightest noise because its wheels were wrapped with tow and rags. Pleasure Island, yep. But in the case of this book, it's called Toy Island. And again, no books. Mothers don't know anything. Just Pinocchio's schoolmates and jeez. So yeah, tow and rags. The coach was drawn by 12 pairs of donkeys, uniformly small in size, but various in color. Some had gray fur, some had white fur, some had salt and pepper speckling, and some had large yellow and blue stripes. But the strangest thing was this, that those 12 pairs of donkeys, those 24 donkeys, instead of wearing horseshoes like all other beasts of burden, were wearing boots of white leather. And the coachman? Picture a miniature man, whiter than he was tall, as soft and oily as a pat of butter, with a face like a little rose apple, a little mouth that was always laughing, and a thin, unctuous voice, like a wheedling cat appealing to its kind mistress. The dreams of youth are regrets of maturity. I mean, I can definitely see it, but I mean, hey, as a little kid, I had a love for reading, and I still have that love now, and there are still some things that I liked as a little kid that I still enjoy, but I balance it out by working hard. So, but yeah, the coachman. So the coachman was terrifying in the Disney remake. This is what they're like in the book. All the children adored him as soon as they saw him, and they raced to climb into his coach to be taken to that paradise on earth that goes by the name of Toyland on the maps. Indeed, the coach was already chock full of kids between the ages of 8 and 12, packed one on top of another like pickled sardines. They were uncomfortable. They were squished. They could scarcely breathe, but not a single one said ouch or complained at all. The comfort of knowing that in a few hours they would arrive in a country without books or school or teachers made them so happy and agreeable that they felt neither sore nor strained, nor hungry, nor thirsty, nor sleepy. As soon as the coach had stopped, Miniman turned to Lampwick, all smirks and courtesy, and asked with a smile, "Tell me, my fine boy, do you too wish to travel to that happy country?" "I certainly do." "Well, I must warn you, my dear, there's no more room in the coach. As you can see, it's all full." "No problem," replied Lampwick. "If there's no room inside, I'll make do by riding on the harness shafts." And with a leap, he climbed up onto the shafts. "And you, my sweet," said Miniman, turning ceremoniously to Pinocchio, "what do you intend to do? Are you coming with us or staying here?" "I'm staying," replied Pinocchio. "I want to go back home. I want to study, and I want to do well in school, as all proper boys do." "I hope it makes you happy." Then Lampwick said, "Pinocchio, listen to me. Come with us and we'll have fun." "No, no, no. Come with us and we'll have fun," shouted several other voices from inside the coach. "Come with us and we'll have fun," screamed all the children in chorus. It seemed like 100 voices. "And if I come with you, what will I tell my good fairy?" said the puppet, who was beginning to weaken and waver. Don't worry your head with such gloomy stuff. Just think, we're going to land where it will be free to raise a ruckus from morning to night." Pinocchio didn't reply, but he sighed. Then he sighed again. Then a third time, finally, he said, "Make a little room. I'm coming too." "The seats are all taken," replied Miniman, "but to show you how welcome you are, I'll let you take my driver's seat." "What about you?" "I'll go on foot." "No, I couldn't allow that. I'd rather ride the back on one of these little donkeys." And just like that, as he approached the front pair of donkeys, he tried to mount the one on the right, but the creature, turning, abruptly rammed him hard in the stomach and knocked him head over heels. I don't know. Kids climbing into a stranger's wagon? Did none of these kids find that kind of sketchy? I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, and considering the description of the coachman, like, there are red flags going, but again, you got to keep in mind that these are kids, and these kids don't know any better. They're going to Toyland because they don't want to read books or study or listen to teachers. They're going because that is essentially like candy from a white van to them. Being able to do whatever you want, and kids want to do that. When you are little, like, you want to be able to do whatever you like regardless of the rules. And that eventually ends up biting you in the rear end. Like, you're like, the parent will pull their kid back. It's like, "Don't touch the hot stove. Touch the hot stove. You're gonna get burned." All he's missing is a ski mask. Oh, he doesn't need a ski mask, Wolfer. When you just wait and see. But yeah, parents tell their kids, like, "Don't touch the hot stove," but eventually they say the kids, like, "All right, you want to touch the hot stove? Fine." And because sometimes kids got to learn the hard way, sadly. But yeah, he doesn't need a ski mask. Okay. So the creature, turning abruptly, rammed him hard in the stomach and knocked him head over heels. Imagine the mischievous, boisterous laughter of all those kids who were watching. But Miniman didn't laugh. "But we still knew about stranger danger." "Yeah, but this guy appears friendly. He doesn't seem menacing, and that's the thing about some threats. Is what's the most dangerous thing about them is they don't look like a threat." So, case in point, you don't need a ski mask. So, but Miniman didn't laugh. Full of tenderness, he approached the little rebellious donkey and, pretending to give it a kiss, bit off half of its right ear. Meanwhile, Pinocchio, having angrily picked himself up off the ground, leapt high into the air and onto that poor creature's back. It was such a splendid leap that the children stopped laughing at him and began shouting, "Hooray for Pinocchio!" and applauding so wildly that it seemed that they might never stop. But suddenly, the little donkey raised both its back legs off the ground and bucked violently, flinging the poor puppet into the middle of the road onto a pile of gravel. More rowdy laughter. But Miniman, instead of laughing, was overcome by such affection for that restless little donkey that, with a kiss, he bit half of its other ear cleanly off. Then he told the puppet, "Go ahead and get back on. Nothing to fear. That little donkey had some bee in his bonnet, but I whispered a word or two in his ears, and now I expect he'll be tame and reasonable." So, yeah, he don't need a ski mask. He bit the ears off the donkey. I mean, he bit half of them off, but still, you get my point. He bit the donkey. Ah, good boy. Okay. Okay. Here, don't get my tea. I'm running low on tea. Pinocchio mounted, and the coach began to move. But as the donkeys galloped and the coach sped over the cobblestones of the main road, the puppet thought he heard a soft voice, barely audible, that said, "Poor sap! You wanted to do as you pleased, but you'll regret it." Pinocchio, a little spooked, looked here and there, trying to figure out where those words were coming from, but he couldn't see anyone. The donkeys were galloping, the coach was racing along, the children inside the coach were sleeping, Lampwick was snoring like a saw, and Miniman, sitting in his driver's seat, was singing under his breath, "Everybody sleeps at night, but I don't sleep at all." After another half a kilometer, Pinocchio heard the same faint little voice telling him, "Keep in mind, you simpleton, that kids who stop studying and turn their backs on books and schools and teachers to devote themselves to toys and fun, they always come to grief. Take it from me. I know from experience. The day will come when you'll regret it too, as I regret it now, but then it will be too late." At these softly whispered words, the puppet, more scared than ever, jumped down off the back of his donkey and seized it by the muzzle. Imagine how he felt. The donkey is trying to save that boy, even at severe cost to itself. It's learned the value of virtue, although much too late. Yes, exactly. And there are people like that now, even today, where they are trying to do that. They are trying to save others, learning that virtue, though much too late. That's one of the things that I like about this book, is that even though it is a fairy tale and a work of fiction with talking cats, talking crickets, talking foxes, and fairies, and giant serpents and talking dogs, etc., etc., even though it is a work of fantasy, it can still be applied to real life, even today, especially to today. But yes, imagine how he felt when he saw that his little donkey was crying, and crying just like a child. "Hey, Mr. Miniman!" shouted Pinocchio to the coachman. "Do you know what's going on here? This little donkey is crying." "Let him cry. On his wedding day he'll laugh. Was it you by chance who taught him to talk?" "No, he learned to stammer a few words on his own from spending 3 years in the company of trained dogs." "Poor beast." "Come now," said Miniman, "let's not waste our time crying for a donkey. Mount him again and let's go. The night is cool and the road is long." Pinocchio obeyed without another word. The coach resumed its course, and in the morning near dawn they happily reached Toyland. This country resembled no other country in this world. Its population was composed entirely of children. The oldest were 14 years of age. The youngest were barely 8. In the streets, such joy, such racket, such screeching as might take the top of your head off. Hordes of rascals everywhere. Some were playing ball, some marbles, some bowls, some were riding bicycles, others wooden horses, some were playing blindsman's bluff, some tag, some dressed as clowns were eating fire, some were acting, some singing, some doing flips, some amused themselves by walking with their hands on the ground and their feet in the air. Some rolled hoops, some strolled about dressed as generals with newspaper helms and papier-mâché swords. Some laughed, some yelled, some called to friends, some clapped and some whistled, and some clucked like hens that had just laid eggs. Such a pandemonium. In other words, such a din, such an infernal hullabaloo, that you'd have to stuff your ears with cotton to keep from going deaf. Kind of like the alcoholics or former drug addicts that they have come to school during Drug Awareness Week. I've never had that happen. When I was a kid and we had anti-drug and we had Drug Awareness Week to stay away from drugs, we did like crazy hair day. We watched videos like sort of PSA-ish, like warning about drugs and alcohol. And we did stuff like that. We never had like former addicts come to the school, but that would be interesting. And I mean, alcohol when you're an adult and in moderation is fine. It's when you start drinking too much of it and you start drinking like a fish that it becomes a problem. So, but yeah. They finally arrived at Toyland. All right. But yeah, keep cutting in your ears from going deaf. Honestly, when I had gone to my homecoming and my prom, like my hearing was kind of dull, but then it kind of cleared up because the music was so loud. But every square hosted little canvas theaters that were packed with kids from dawn till dusk, and the walls of every house bore phrases scrawled in charcoal that said splendid things like "Toys are great" instead of "great." No more schools instead of schools. Down with arithmetic instead of arithmetic, and other such gems. And all these phrases are misspelled. Like great is spelled GRAT, like grating cheese. Schools is spelled SKOOLS. Down with, and then arithmetic is spelled RITT space MATICK. So like a name. Excuse me. As for Pinocchio and Lampwick and all the other children who had made the journey with Miniman, as soon as they set foot in the town, they plunged right into the heart of that great hubbub, and in a matter of minutes, you might well guess, they had made friends with everyone. Who could have been happier, who more contented than they? The primrose path. Yep. Don't worry. Pinocchio will learn his lesson again. The hard way, but again. Okay. Amid the continuous fun and those various amusements, the hours and days and weeks passed like so many flashes of lightning. "Oh, what a beautiful life," said Pinocchio every time he happened to run into Lampwick. "You see? Was I right or what?" Lampwick replied. "And to think you didn't want to come. To think that you had gotten it into your head to go back home to your fairy, to waste your time studying. If you're not free from boredom of books and school, you owe it to me, to my advice, to my kindness, don't you think? Only our truest friends can do us such great favors." "It's true, Lampwick. I'm a truly happy boy today. It's all thanks to you. Our teacher, though, do you know what he used to say about you? He always said, 'Don't spend time with that scamp Lampwick, because he's a bad influence and will only lead you astray.'" "Poor teacher," replied Lampwick, shaking his head. I know all too well that he didn't care for me and that he always liked to slander me. But I'm generous and I forgive him." "Noble soul," said Pinocchio, warmly embracing his friend and giving him a kiss on the forehead. This fine paradise was nothing but fun and games and all the livelong day, with no books or schools in sight. It went on for 5 months, until one morning Pinocchio woke to discover, as the saying goes, a rather nasty surprise, which left him in a bad mood indeed. Karma. Chapter 32. How many times does this kid have to keep learning the same lesson? He's worse than Carl from The Walking Dead! I've never seen The Walking Dead. But, I mean, again, he's a kid, and he also has a head like wood. So, you kind of got to have some patience, but at the same time, I can understand the frustration. Because, like, the moment that he just said to let the fairy yell and that a good yell would calm her down, I just literally took off my glasses and face palm. Like, I swear, if the blue fairy, like, still has traces of her fave roots in her, like, I mean, I don't know. If I were in her shoes, I would have twisted Pinocchio's ear and yanked him back home, but it's not the purpose. Again, sometimes kids got to learn the hard way, but I mean, I don't know. I screwed up a lot as a little kid and I made mistakes, but I learned really quick not to. And one of the ways I learned to listen was my parents would grab me by the ear and they would twist it really hard. It's like, do I have your attention now? Like, this is going with me. Whether the rest of you follows is up to you. And so yeah, I learned really quick and I'm glad that I did get my ear twisted and I did get punished because I learned from my mistakes. And now as an adult, I'm definitely better and I know a lot more than I did then as a kid. So anyway, okay, chapter 32. And what might this surprise be? I'll tell you, my dear little readers. The surprise was that Pinocchio, when he woke up, naturally gave his head a scratch. But as he was scratching, he noticed... Well, can you guess what he noticed? Maybe Geppetto should have given him a bucket for a head. At least you can put things in a bucket. I mean, yeah, but at the same time, he's a little wooden boy. He's made out of wood. I mean, he could have made him like a kappa. I think that's what they're called, the kappa. Basically, a Japanese creature with a bowl on the top of their head. I mean, he could have done that, but I don't think he knew about Japanese monsters. So, because with a kappa, like the bowl is shallow, but I mean, at least it holds water, so at least it would have held some stuff. So yeah. But if Geppetto had made Pinocchio perfect, then we wouldn't have a story about a character, a flawed character growing and bettering themselves. So if Pinocchio was perfect, we wouldn't have a story. So yeah, it's irritating, but I promise the ending is extremely satisfying. I promise. Cross my heart. All right. He noticed to his great shock that his ears were now bigger than his hands. All his life, you see, the puppet had tiny little ears, so tiny that they could not be seen with the naked eye. So imagine his reaction when he touched his ears and found that, during the night, they had grown so long that they looked like 2 leaves on a cornstalk. He immediately went to find a mirror so he could look at himself. Failing to find one, he filled the wash basin with water, and looking down at his reflection, he saw something he would rather never have seen: his own image adorned with a magnificent pair of donkey ears. I'll leave it to you to imagine poor Pinocchio's sorrow, shame, and despair. The first thing an Egyptian scribe was taught to write was, "The ears of a boy are on his back." I mean, he ain't wrong. He is not wrong. I'm doing live stream. Do not interrupt me. I'm busy.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask if you wanted to go on a walk with me.
I'm doing live stream Sasquatch.
I know. Alright.
The Sasquatch. Well, you can't see him, but you can hear the Sasquatch.
Woof.
There's a reason why we call him a Sasquatch. It's because he's so tall. He's taller than me. Well, I mean, you guys did see him in the Hansel and Gretel stream. Oh, hi. Don't.
This is my quote-unquote big sister.
Don't head pat me. I hate that. Makes me feel small and condescended. I hate that. Stop it.
That you are.
I am not small.
Yes, you are.
I am 5 foot 7 inches and 3/4. I can destroy you.
6 4 1/4. I can carry you.
No.
Yes.
Stop it. Just go on your walk. I'm reading. I remember Wolfer. You said that things like this, it was like being at a friend's house. I don't know whether that adds to the atmosphere and is good or not. Hey!
Boink.
Did you even ask?
Singular starburst.
Shameful! You need to ask! You need to ask! It's my candy! I bought it!
I'm eating it.
This is what I live with. Be careful! That is what I live with.
guys in the comment section, can you give us some slack for me, please?
Wolfer is nice. Wolfer gets it. Anyway, so a pair of donkey ears. I'll leave it to you to imagine poor Pinocchio's shame and despair. He began to cry, to shriek, to bang his head against the wall. But the more he despaired, the more the ears grew and grew and grew, and they were becoming furry at their tips. At the sound of those piercing cries, his door opened, and in came a pretty little marmot, who lived upstairs from him, who, seeing the puppet in such a frenzy, asked him gently, "What's wrong, my dear housemate?" "I'm sick, my dear marmot, very sick, and sick with a sickness that scares me. Do you know anything about pulses?" "A little." "Then check mine, to see if by chance I have a fever." The marmot raised her right forepaw, and after taking Pinocchio's pulse, she said to him with a sigh, "My friend, I'm afraid I have some terrible news." "What is it?" "You have a terrible fever." "What kind of fever?" "Jackass fever." "I don't understand what jackass fever is," said the puppet, though alas, he did understand. Wolfer just replied, "Sasquatch, give your little sister back her candy." I appreciate that, Wolfer, but at the same time, I'm not little. I'm the eldest. I'm the big sister. I still have more candy in there, though. Still, next time, ask. Ask for permission before you take things. Grr. Yeah, this is what I live with. Anyway, so a marmot checking a pulse, because checking a pulse is exactly how you tell that you've got a fever. Last time I checked, it was you check the temperature. So jackass fever. "I don't understand what jackass fever is," said the puppet, though alas, he did understand. "I'll explain it then," said the marmot. "You should know that within 2 or 3 hours, you'll no longer be a puppet or even a little boy." "Then what will I be?" "Within 2 or 3 hours, you'll become a real live donkey, like the ones who pull the coaches or carry heads of cabbage and lettuce to market." "Oh, poor me," cried Pinocchio, seizing both ears in his hands and tugging them and yanking them furiously, as if they were someone else's ears. "My dear," replied the marmot, trying to comfort him, "what can you do about it now? It's your destiny. It's written among the decrees of wisdom that all those lazy children who, bored with books and schools and teachers, spend their days playing games and having fun, will sooner or later end up turning into little jackasses." "Is that really true?" asked the puppet, sobbing. "Unfortunately it is, so there's no use crying now. You should have thought of that sooner." "But it's not my fault, believe me. It's all Lampwick's fault." "And who is this Lampwick?" "A schoolmate of mine. I wanted to go home. I wanted to do as I was told. I wanted to keep studying and to do well in school, but Lampwick said, 'Why bother studying? Why go to school? Come with me instead of Toyland. There we won't have to study anymore. There we'll have fun from dusk till dawn and we'll always be happy.'" "And why did you listen to the advice of that false friend with bad influence?" Pulses was an old term for the lymph nodes. Fair enough. The marmot. The marmot just explaining all this ever so casually, despite the fact that it's horrifying. "Why? Because, my dear marmot, I'm a foolish, heartless puppet. Oh, if I had any heart at all, I never would have abandoned that good fairy who loved me like a mother and who did so much for me. And then instead of a puppet, I'd be a respectable boy like so many others. Oh, if I run into that Lampwick, he'd better be careful. I'm going to give him an earful." He turned to go, but on reaching the door, he remembered he had donkey ears, since he was ashamed to show them in public. Do you know what he did? He put on a big nightcap and pulled it so far down his head that it nearly touched his nose. He then went out and started looking all over for Lampwick. He looked in the streets, in the squares, in the theaters, everywhere, but he couldn't find him. He asked everyone he saw, but no one had seen him. He decided to try Lampwick's house. Once at the door, he knocked. "Who is it?" asked Lampwick from within. "It's me," replied the puppet. "Just a minute, I'll open the door." Half an hour later, the door opened. Imagine Pinocchio's reaction when, entering the room, he saw his friend Lampwick wearing a big nightcap pulled down to his nose. Curious. The sight of that nightcap almost made Pinocchio feel better, and he immediately wondered, might my friend have suffered the same sickness too? Might he too be suffering from donkey fever? Smiling and pretending not to notice anything, he asked,
are you doing, my dear Lampwick? I'm doing great, like a mouse in a wheel of Parmesan cheese. Do you really mean it? Would I lie to you? Excuse me, my friend, but why then are you wearing that nightcap which covers both your ears? Doctor's orders. I injured my knee. And you, dear Pinocchio, why are you wearing that nightcap which has been tugged down to your nose? Doctor's orders. I scraped my foot. Oh, poor Pinocchio. Oh, poor Lampwick. A long silence followed these words, during which the two friends did nothing but look mockingly at each other. At last, the puppet, in a soft, sweet voice, said to his friend, I'm curious, my dear Lampwick. Have you ever had any problems with your ears? Never. And you? Never. Ever since this morning, but one of my ears has been aching. I've got the same pain myself. You too? Which ear is the one that hurts? Both of them. And you? Both of them. Could it be the same sickness? I'm afraid it might be. Would you do me a favor, Lampwick? Gladly, with all my heart. Show me your ears. Why not? But first I want to see yours, my dear Pinocchio. No, you have to go first. No, dear, you first, then me. Well then, said the puppet, let's make a deal like good friends. Let's hear the deal. We'll both take our hats off at the same time. Agreed? Agreed. Okay, get ready. And Pinocchio began to count out loud. 1, 2, 3. At the word 3, the two boys grabbed their hats and threw them into the air. The scene that followed might seem unbelievable were it not true. Pinocchio and Lampwick, when each other saw that the other was stricken with the same misfortune, instead of being mortified and sorrowful, began poking fun at each other's outsized ears until, after 1,000 incivilities, they wound up bursting into hearty laughter. And they laughed until they were doubled over with laughter. But suddenly, at the height of their hilarity, Lampwick stopped laughing and began to stagger and to change color. And he said to his friend, Help, Pinocchio, help! What's wrong? Oh no, I can no longer stand up straight. Neither can I, shouted Pinocchio, crying and tottering. And as they spoke, they both fell forward onto all fours and began to trot and run around the room on their hands and feet. As they ran, their hands became hooves, their faces lengthened into muzzles, and their backs were a coat of light gray fur speckled with black. But do you know what the worst moment was for those two wretches? The worst, most humiliating moment was when they felt their tails sprouting behind them. Overcome then by shame and pain, they tried to weep and to lament their fate. If only they had never tried that, because instead of moans and laments, out came the braying of jackasses, and they brayed resoundingly in chorus, Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw. Just then, there was a knock at the door, and they heard a voice saying, Open up! Miniman here, the coachman who brought you to this country. Open up or else. Honestly, it seems to be a metaphor for becoming a little beast. Yeah, kind of. And Miniman, I don't know how to tell you this, but they're donkeys now. They got hooves. They can't open a door. Opening doors requires thumbs. Thumbs they no longer have because they ended up at Toyland. I don't know how to tell you that, Miniman. You creep. Biting half the ears off of donkeys. Shameful. Shameful, coachman. Jeez. Don't worry. I promise it gets better, but, I mean, he had it coming. But, I mean, Pinocchio, you walked right into this. The Marmot just being so casual about explaining the horrifying transformation that they're about to go under. Wow. Chapter 33. When no one opened the door, Miniman opened it wide with a violent kick. Entering the room, he addressed Pinocchio and Lampwick with his usual giggle, saying, Well done, boys. You brayed nicely, and I recognized your voices right away, and so here I am. At these words, the hearts of those two little donkeys sank. Their heads bowed, their ears drooped, and their tails slid between their legs. First, Miniman rubbed them, stroked them, patted them. Then he took out his currycomb and began thoroughly grooming them. Oh my gosh, Cosmic, did you just jump all the way into that box? Oh my goodness, you just jumped into that box. Give me a sec. I got a box from my work before my day is off because I'm going to thin my library out because there are some books in my library that I don't read, and so I'm going to give them to a used bookstore.
as is a tradition that I always do. Give a little bag inside so it gives me room to make room for more books. October, can you get out of the laundry basket? October, you get out. And as for you, you come out of that box. You are not a book. You are not a book. No, I don't care if you self-identify as a book. You cannot be a book, for you are a cat. A little adorable cat. A little cat who is on camera. Just desserts. Indeed. Indeed, Wolford's just desserts. And everyone say hello to Cosmic. This is Cosmic the baby. One more. You're so loved. She's very sweet. There we go. Bloop. Okay. But yeah, I mean... Oh, yay. Laptop's fully charged. Okay. Let me just get everything edited. But yeah, Wolfer, you're right. They did get their just desserts because that's kind of what happens. And again, sometimes kids got to learn the hard way. And it's sad. But I mean, sometimes parents let their kids learn the hard way. But a parent would rather have the kid learn that in the safety of the home rather than out in the real world. Because the real world is a lot more cruel. Anyway, so, okay. First, Miniman rubbed them, stroked them, patted them. Then he took out his curry comb and began thoroughly grooming them. After combing them until they gleamed like two mirrors, he put halters on them and led them to the market square in hopes of selling them and pocketing a tidy sum. Ah, such a cute, fluffy little kitty. Yes, she is very fluffy. She is very sweet and adorable and mischievous and playful, and I love her. She literally jumped into the box. She's kind of bouncy. She jumps a lot. I think she might have been taking lessons from Tigger. She's bouncy and flouncy. All right. Okay, so yeah, Mini Man has taken Pinocchio and Lampic. He's combed them, he's groomed them, and he's gonna sell them on the market for a tidy sum. At least the plumbing still works. Anyway. Okay. Okay. And indeed, he did not have to wait for buyers. A farmer whose jackass had died the day before bought Lampic and Pinocchio. Pinocchio was sold to the ringmaster of a troupe of clowns and acrobats who planned to train him to jump and dance with the other beasts in his troupe. And now do you understand, my little readers, what a fine line of work Miniman was in? This nasty little monstrosity, who looked all milk and honey, went about the world from time to time in his coach, using promises and sweet talks to gather up all the lazy children who were bored with books and schools, and after loading them into his coach, he drove them to Toyland and let them spend all their time playing and raising a ruckus and having fun. And when those poor deluded kids, as a consequence of always playing and never studying, turned into so many donkeys, then Miniman, pleased as Punch, would seize them and take them off to fairs and markets to be sold. And so, in just a few years, he had made scads of money and became a millionaire. It definitely differs from the Disney version where they're sold to the salt mines, but it still doesn't take away the horror and messed upness of it. So, yeah. What became of Lampwick, I can't say. I do know, however, that Pinocchio's new life was, from the very beginning, grueling and harsh. And when he was led to his stall, his new master filled the manger with chopped straw, but Pinocchio, after tasting a mouthful, spit it back out. So his master, grumbling, filled the manger with hay, but Pinocchio didn't like hay either. Oh, so you don't like hay either, shouted his master angrily. Don't worry, my pretty little donkey. If you've gotten some silly notions into your head, I'll be sure to get them out. And to teach him a lesson, he smacked his whip across his legs. The sharp pain caused Pinocchio to cry and bray. Braying, he said, I can't digest straw. So eat your hay then, replied his master, who understood asinine dialect quite well. Don't get into strangers' coaches, kids! Yeah. To quote a Dungeons and Dragons meme that I've seen, if it looks too good to be true, rest assured, it's a trap.
Asinine dialect quite well. He makes my tummy ache. I suppose you expect me to feed a jackass like yourself on breast of chicken and guillotine of capon, replied his owner, who becoming angrier and angrier and smacking him again with his whip. After this second lashing, Pinocchio wisely held his tongue and said no more. When the stable door was closed, Pinocchio was left alone, and since he hadn't eaten in many hours, he began to yawn from hunger, and when he yawned, his mouth opened as wide as an oven. Finally, finding nothing else in the manger, he resigned himself to chewing a bit of hay, and after chewing it really well, he closed his eyes and gulped it down. This hay isn't that bad, he thought to himself, but how much better things would have been if I kept studying. Right now, instead of hay, I could be eating a French hunk of bread and a nice slice of salami. Well. When he woke the next morning, he immediately looked in the manger for more hay, but he found none, having eaten it all during the night. So then he took a bite of the chopped straw, and as he stood there chewing it, he had to admit the chopped straw tasted nothing like either Milanese rice or Neapolitan macaroni. Oh well, he repeated, still chewing, but I hope at least that my misfortune can be a lesson to all those disobedient kids who don't want to study. Oh well, oh well. Oh well, my foot! Yelled his master, entering the stable at that very moment. Do you think, my pretty little donkey, that I bought you just to offer you food and drink? I bought you so you'll work and earn me a handsome profit. Come now, attaboy, come with me to the circus, and I'll teach you how to jump through hoops, how to smash cardboard barrels with your head, and how to dance the waltz and the polka up on your hind legs. Whether he liked it or not, poor Pinocchio had to learn all these fine things, but it took 3 months of lessons to learn them, and nearly enough whippings to take his hide off. Oh, sorry. Maria, my cat, is using the litter box. Cosmic. Oh my goodness, my cats are kind of weird. I love them, but they're a little weird. Anyway, at last the day came when his master could announce a truly extraordinary event. Notices of various colors posted on the street corner said this: Grand Gala Show this evening. Witness the troupe's usual amazing leaps and feats, performed by all its artists, and all its horses, mares, and stallions alike. Plus, appearing for the first time, the famous Donkey Pinocchio, also known as the star of the dance. All the theaters will be as bright as day. That evening, as you might guess, the theater was already jam-packed an hour before the show was to begin. Not a single seat was left, not in the orchestra, not in the boxes, not even if you could afford to pay its weight in gold. Around the circus, the tiers of seats were teeming with children of all ages who were in a frenzy of excitement to see the famous Donkey Pinocchio dance. Excuse me. When the first portion of the show came to an end, the ringmaster, dressed in a black tailcoat, tight white pants, and knee-high leather boots, I'm not going to say anything, introduced himself to the packed audience. After a sweeping bow, he solemnly intoned the following preposterous speech. Esteemed public, lords and ladies, yours truly, whilst traversing through your illustrious metropolitan, wish to procreate for myself the honor not to make mention of the pleasure of presenting to such a discerning and distinct audience this famous donkey who has heretofore enjoyed the honor of dancing in the presence of His Majesty the Emperor in all the major courts of Europe. And albeit full of gratitude, please assist us with your arousing presence and indulge us. The speech was received with much laughter and much applause, but the applause redoubled and became a sort of hurricane as Donkey Pinocchio approached the center of the ring. He was all decked up for the occasion, a new bridle of patent leather with brass buckles and studs, a white camellia blossom behind each ear, his mane divvied up into lots of locks tied with charming red silk bows, a wide gold and silver sash around his belly, and ribbons of blue and purple velvet braided into his tail. In short, He was an utterly adorable little donkey. I mean, yeah, that looks like that might be kind of cute. I don't know. Lots of ribbons. A very adorable, an utterly adorable little donkey. The ringmaster continued his introduction of Pinocchio with these remarks. Honorable auditors, I shall not stand here deceiving you with regard to the great difficulty surmounted by myself in captivating and subjugating the aforementioned mammal, whilst he grazed freely from mountaintop to mountaintop in this torrid zone. Observe, if you please, the wilderness oozing forth from his eyes, notwithstanding our futile attempts to tame him to the life of a civilized quadruped, which oftentimes force myself to resort to the genial parlance of the whip. But each kindness of mine, instead of enduring myself to him, made him even furthermore ill-disposed towards myself. However, following the Gallic system, I located within his cranium a small bony part, which in that famous medical school in Paris has recognized as the bulb that regenerates hair, and the Furic dance, and I absolved thenceforth to train him to dance, not to mention to jump through hoops and paper-lined barrels. Marvel at him, then judge him. Before I bid you much adieu, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to invite you back to the matinee to show you tomorrow evening. In the event that rainy weather threatens precision, the show will be postponed from tomorrow evening to 11 a.m. tomorrow afternoon. And here the ringmaster made another very deep bow. Then, turning to Pinocchio, he said, Attaboy, Pinocchio! Before commencing your exploits, please greet our distinguished audience, lords, ladies, and children. Pinocchio obeyed at once, kneeling down on his two front knees, and waiting until the ringmaster, cracking his whip, shouted, Walk! At that, the little donkey rose up on four legs and began to circle the ring at a walking pace. After a little while, the ringmaster said, Trot! And Pinocchio, as instructed, quickened his pace into a trot. Canter! And Pinocchio began running. Gallop! And Pinocchio began racing as fast as he could. As he sped along like a Barbary steed, the ringmaster raised his arms into the air and fired his pistol. At the shot, the donkey, pretending to be hit, collapsed onto the ground and acted as if he were truly dying. He got back onto his feet amid an explosion of applause and cheers that seemed to rise up to the sky, and so, naturally, he lifted his head to look up, and looking up, he saw in one of the boxes a beautiful lady with a thick gold chain around her neck, from which hung a medallion. On the medallion was painted the portrait of a puppet. That's a portrait of me! That lady is the fairy! Pinocchio said to himself, for he recognized her at once. Overcome by happiness, he began to shout, Oh, dear fairy! Oh, dear fairy! But instead of words, there emerged from his throat a bray so sonorous and sustained that it made every spectator in the theater laugh, especially the children. But the ringmaster, to teach him a lesson that it wasn't good behavior to start braying at the audience, gave him a whack on the nose with the handle of his whip. Sticking his tongue way out, the poor donkey licked his nose for a good 5 minutes, thinking that perhaps it would ease the pain. Imagine his despair when, turning back towards the audience, he saw that the fairy's box was empty. She was gone. He felt like dying. His eyes filled with tears, and he began to sob. Nobody noticed, however, least of all the ringmaster, who in fact cracked his whip and shouted, Attaboy, Pinocchio! Now show these ladies and gentlemen how gracefully you can jump through hoops. Pinocchio tried 2 or 3 times, but each time he approached the hoop, instead of jumping through it, he found it easier to go under it. Finally, he leapt into the air and threw. Unfortunately, however, his back legs got caught in the hoop, causing him to crash to the ground in a heap on the other side. When he got onto his feet, he was limping, but he could barely walk back to the stable. Bring up Pinocchio! We want the donkey! Bring up the donkey! Shouted all the children from the orchestra seats, moved to pity by the wretched turn of events. But the donkey was not to be seen again that evening. The next morning, after examining him, the veterinarian, that's a fancy word for animal doctor, declared that Pinocchio would be lame for the rest of his life. And the ringmaster said to his stable boy, What am I supposed to do with a lame donkey? He'd be nothing but a troublesome freeloader. Take him to the market and sell him. Once he reached the market square, they quickly found a buyer who asked the stable boy, How much do you want for that lame donkey? $20. I'll give you 20 nickels. Don't pretend I'm buying him to work for me. I'm just buying him for his hide. I see that he's got really tough skin, and I want to make a drum out of it for my town's band. I'll leave it to you, children, to guess how good Pinocchio felt when he heard that he was destined to become a drum. Okay. Still doing live stream. Still doing my live stream. Okay. I'm not little, I'm your eldest.
I know you're the eldest, so I still have to bully you.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. You're just being a jerk. Jerks get coal in their stockings. Okay, destined to become a drum. And indeed the buyer, as soon as he paid his 20 nickels, led the donkey to the seashore. Then, after hanging a large stone around his neck and tying a rope to one of his feet, he gave him a quick shove, knocking him into the water. With that stone around his neck, Pinocchio sank right to the bottom, and the buyer, holding the other end of the rope, sat down on a rock to wait until the donkey had plenty of time to drown. Then he would skin him and go home with his hide. I mean, that's one way to put a donkey out of its misery rather than, skinning them alive. I mean, it doesn't make it better, but I mean, I have a cousin who makes jerky and he butchers his own meat. And with my whole family, my dad hunts, and the whole rule of thumb is you never, ever make the animal suffer. You make it as quick and as painless as possible to have respect for that creature that you're getting meat from. Or in the case of this guy, getting a drum from. So, I mean, he could have done it in an easier way to make it quick and painless, but if he did, we wouldn't have the rest of the story. And it gets better. I swear. We're on chapter 34 now. So 34, 35, 36. 3 chapters left. I promise it gets better. Cross my heart. Chapter 34. Give me a sec. I'm just going to shut the door. That way you don't have to hear my brother. Okay. This also gives me some time to stretch. Sorry. Sitting down. I like reading the story, but sometimes I just gotta stretch. Okay. Hamster socks. It's fine. Okay. Chapter 34. After the donkey had been underwater for almost an hour, the buyer said to nobody but himself, "By now my poor lame donkey must be good and drowned. Let's pull him back up so we can make a nice drum from his hide." So he began to pull on the rope that he had tied to the donkey's leg. He pulled and pulled and pulled, and finally, breaking the surface of the water, he saw, can you guess? He saw, instead of a dead donkey, a live puppet squirming like an eel. Seeing that wooden puppet, the poor man thought he must be dreaming, and he stood there dumbfounded, his mouth hanging open and his eyes popping out. When he had collected himself a little, he wept and stammered and said, "And the donkey I threw into the sea, what happened to him?" "That donkey was me," replied the puppet, laughing. "You? Me? Oh, you scamp! You think you can play tricks on me?" "Play tricks? Not at all, dear master. I'm being serious." "But how in the world can a donkey, after spending a little time in the water, turn into a wooden puppet?" "The salt water must have done it. The sea plays funny tricks." "Careful, puppet. Don't think you can amuse yourself at my expense. Careful I don't lose my temper." "Well, master, do you want to learn the true story? Untie my leg and I'll tell you." Curious to know the true story, that poor fool of a buyer quickly untied the knot that held the puppet fast. And Pinocchio, finding himself free as a bird, began to tell his story. "You see, I used to be a wooden puppet, as I am today, and I was just about to become a real boy like so many others in this world. But instead I ran away from home, because I wasn't crazy about studying, and because I was listening to my ne'er-do-well friends. Then one fine day, I woke up to find myself turning into a jackass, ears and all, right down to the tail. I was so ashamed, I wouldn't want blessed St. Anthony to make anyone, even you, feel such shame. Then I was taken to the donkey market and sold to the ringmaster for a horse circus, who got the notion to turn me into a great dancer and hoop jumper. One evening during the show, I had a bad fall in the ring and injured 2 of my legs. So the ringmaster, not knowing what to do with the lame donkey, sent me back to the market, and then you bought me. Alas, and I paid 20 nickels, and now who's going to give me back my money? And why did you buy me? You bought me to make a drum out of my hide. A drum! Alas, and now where will I find another hide? Don't despair, master. There's no shortage of donkeys in this world. Tell me, you cheeky rascal, does your story end here?
All this speaking makes my throat dry, and I'm almost out of tea in my cup. Oh, no. Anyway, okay, does your story end there?
No, replied the puppet, and just a few more words, and then it will be over. After buying me, you led me to this place to kill me. But then, giving into a humane, merciful impulse, you decided to hang a stone around my neck and throw me into the bottom of the sea. That soft-hearted impulse is a great credit to you, and I'll always be grateful to you. But this time, dear master, you didn't count on the fairy.
I mean, Pinocchio, I mean, again, props for trying to make it merciful, but I don't see how letting you drown would be merciful, because I've almost drowned once, and it's not quick. I thought I was going to drown and die, but I didn't, because a lifeguard got me and was able to swim me to save me. But yeah, drowning isn't peaceful, and from what I've heard, it's quite painful. While it would be poetic for me to drown and die that way, since I love the water, not gonna try that again. Not gonna drown. Ideally, I hope to die peacefully in my sleep. I'd like to be able to do that. Anywho, but that's not for a long time, Lord willing. I hope to live to a very ripe old age, as old of an age as is traditional for my family, which I think we usually clock out at around 80 or 90, 92 maybe. Anyway.
Okay, but you didn't count on the fairy. What fairy is this? She's my mother, and she's like all those good mothers who dote on their children and always keep an eye on them and come to their aid in times of trouble, even when those children, thanks to their carelessness or bad behavior, deserve to be abandoned and left to fend for themselves. So as I was saying, the good fairy, when she saw me in danger of drowning, sent a school of fish my way, and the fish, believing I was actually a dead donkey, started eating me, and what bites they took! I never would have believed that fish were greedier than children. Some ate my ears, some ate my muzzle, some my neck, and some my mane. Some ate the skin off my legs, and some ate the fur off my back, and one of them was even kind enough to eat my tail. From now on, said the horrified buyer, I swear never to eat a bite of fish again. I couldn't bear cutting open a goldfish or some fried hake and finding a donkey tail inside. I agree, said the puppet, laughing. Besides, you should know that when the fishes finished eating away all of the asinine flesh that covered me from head to toe, they finally got down to the bone. Or rather, down to the wood, because as you can see, I'm made of extremely hard wood, and a few nibbles of that, those greedy fish soon figured out that wood was not their cup of tea, and nauseated by such indigestible fare, they swam off, some this way, some that, without so much as a thank you. And now I've told you how it came to pass that you found a live puppet at the end of your rope instead of a dead donkey.
Well, it's more merciful than getting your your throat slit, as was the standard method of horse slaughter. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, honestly, my dad at one point showed a video of my cousin, the one who makes his own jerky and burgers meat, and how he got a cow ready, and he basically just shot them in the head, and the cow dropped dead. And I think that's how you should do it. Again, you make it quick, you make it painless, you don't want that animal to suffer, and by making it quick and painless, you're showing respect to that animal. And again, you're being respectful in the meat that they're providing for you. Now I'm reminded of the red wall prayer over the fish. Gentle fish, we take your life only for a meal to make. Mental note. I really ought to collect the red wall series. Sorry. Little childhood nostalgia. And I actually do have some of the red wall books by Brian Jacques. They're really good.
Anywho, okay, instead of a dead donkey. I couldn't care less about your story, shouted the enraged buyer. All I know is I paid 20 nickels for you and I want my money back. You know what I'll do? I'll take you straight back to the market and sell you by weight, as seasoned wood, good for starting fires. Go ahead and sell me again. I don't mind. But as he said that, he leapt high into the air and splashed into the water, swimming cheerfully away from the beach. He shouted back to the poor buyer, Goodbye, master. If you ever need a hide to make a drum, think of me. He kept laughing. He laughed and kept on swimming. A minute later, he turned and shouted even louder, Goodbye, master. If you ever need some seasoned wood to start a fire, think of me.
Bolt guns didn't exist at the time and gunpowder was expensive. Fair enough. But again, you gotta make it quick and painless and be merciful. Still. Dang. Anyway. So Pinocchio is no longer a donkey. He's a wooden boy again.
He is trying for the better. Let's see. So think of me. And so it was that, before long, he had swum so far out that he was scarcely visible from shore. Or rather, all that was visible was a little black dot on the surface of the sea, a dot that every now and then lifted its legs out of the water to jump up and do flips like a dolphin in a frisky mood. As he swam about aimlessly, Pinocchio saw in the midst of the sea a rock that looked like white marble, and on top of it a pretty little goat was bleating affectionately and beckoning him to come near. But the strangest thing was this. The goat's fleece, instead of being white or black or splotched with more than one color like the fleece of other goats,
it was completely blue.
Indeed, it was such a dazzling sky blue that it reminded him strongly of the beautiful girl. I'll let you guess whether or not Pinocchio's heart began to beat faster. With renewed strength and energy, he began swimming toward the white rock, and he was already halfway there when he saw, rising out of the water and coming toward him, the terrifying head of a sea monster, its mouth gaping like a huge cavern, with 3 rows of fangs that would have been scary even just in a picture. And do you know who the sea monster was? This sea monster was none other than the gigantic shark who was mentioned several times earlier in this story, and who, thanks to his butchery and insatiable ferocity, was known as the Attila of fish and fishermen. Imagine poor Pinocchio's dread at the sight of this monster. He tried to dodge him, to change directions. He tried to escape, but that enormous, gaping mouth kept coming at him, fast as an arrow. Hurry, Pinocchio, for goodness sake, pleaded the beautiful goat. And as Pinocchio swam desperately, using his arms, chest, his legs, and his feet, Quick, Pinocchio, the monster is getting closer. And Pinocchio, gathering all his strength, swam even harder. Careful, Pinocchio, the monster is catching up. It's right here, it's right here. Hurry up, for goodness sakes. Hurry up, for goodness sakes, or you'll be lost.
True, humane slaughter laws are one of the good things in our time. Yeah, if you're going to be preparing any meat, you got to be humane and decent about it. I hear that might be changing, and like farmers won't be able to farm anymore. I don't know. It's crazy these times we live in. Anywho, so yeah, Pinocchio is trying to outswim the Attila of fish and fishermen. That horrible dogfish, as it said in some chapters, in some renditions of the book. I just got this. I got this rendition from my used bookstore, which is where I get quite a few of my books, is at used bookstores. They're comfy and they're cozy. We're Shark Navy! Help! Alexandro. I mean, this fish is big. This is basically, like, to quote overly sarcastic performances, an enormous fuck you fish. So yeah, Alexandra would need a harpoon, an Alice drink meat potion, or an eat me cake, because yeah, I think it's the eat me cakes that make you bigger. Anywho, okay.
And Pinocchio swam faster than he ever had, on and on and on, zooming like a bullet. He was already nearly in reach of the rock, and the goat was already leaning out to sea, stretching her forelegs toward him to help him out of the water. But by then it was too late. The monster had caught him. Taking a deep breath, the monster swallowed the poor puppet as if he were sucking up a raw egg. And he swallowed him with such violence and avidity that Pinocchio was knocked cruelly about inside the shark's body, leaving him still in a daze. A quarter of an hour later, when he came back to his senses after that shock, he didn't have the faintest idea where he was. All around him, was a great darkness, a darkness so black and so profound he felt he had fallen headfirst into a brimming inkwell. He sat there listening, but didn't hear a sound. Every now and then the rough gusts of wind whipped across his face. At first he didn't understand where that wind was coming from, but then he realized it came from the monster's lungs. The shark, you see, suffered terribly from asthma, and when he breathed, it sounded just like a north wind blowing. So yeah, I made the reference to asthma saving the day earlier. It was kind of a joke and a reference to this because the shark suffers from asthma, apparently. Why? I don't know. It's a fairy tale. We have talking cats, talking crickets. People can die and come back from the dead completely whole and alive as they were before. Sharks can have asthma. Go figure. Pinocchio at first tried to act brave, but when he confirmed that he was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, trapped in the belly of a sea monster, he began to weep and wail. And through his tears he said, "Help, help, help, poor me! Isn't anyone coming to rescue me?" "Who do you expect to rescue you, wretch?" An old voice said a cracked old voice in the darkness, sounding like an out-of-tune guitar. "Who said that?" said Pinocchio, frozen with fear. "I did. I'm a poor tuna, swallowed along with you by the shark. And you? What kind of fish are you?" "I have nothing to do with fish. I'm a puppet." "Well, if you're not a fish, why'd you let yourself get swallowed by the monster?" "I didn't let myself get swallowed. He just came and swallowed me. And now what are we supposed to do here in the dark?" "Accept our fate and wait for the shark to digest us both." "But I don't want to be digested," howled Pinocchio, starting to cry again. "Neither do I," replied the tuna. "But I am rather philosophical, and I take comfort in the thought that, when you were born a tuna, it's nobler to die in water than in oil." "Nonsense!" shouted Pinocchio. "That's my opinion," replied the tuna, "and all opinions, as the tuna politicians say, deserve to be respected." A smoking shark? Hey, maybe he just chain smoked cigarettes non-stop, or cigars. Maybe he just puffed and chain smoked on cigars until he developed a severe asthma. I don't know. Asthma for me at least is hereditary. And I find if I laugh too hard that I can trigger my asthma. So yeah, maybe the shark chain smoked. We don't know. It's a fairy tale though. If we can have talking crickets talking cats, and people totally fine with a guy luring children away in a coach to Toyland where they get turned into donkeys, we can have sharks that have asthma. So I don't know what to tell you. Okay, deserves to be respected and we can also, have tuna politicians. It just works. Okay. No matter what, I want to get out of here. I want to escape. Escape then, if you can. The shark has swallowed us. Is he very big? Asked the puppet. He's more than 1 kilometer long. Just imagine. And that's not counting his tail. As they were discussing these matters in the dark, Pinocchio thought he saw, far off in the distance, a faint glow. What in the world could that little light be, way off in the distance? Pinocchio wondered aloud. It must be some companion in misfortune, waiting like us to be digested. I want to go see. What if it turns out to be some old fish who can show me the way out? I hope with all my heart that you're right, dear puppet. Goodbye, Tuna. Goodbye, puppet, and good luck. Where will we see each other again? Who knows? Some things we shouldn't even think about. Political rip.
Hey, it's a tuna fish. It's a tuna. We don't judge. We don't judge. Again, it's a fairy tale. We got talking cats, talking crickets, sharks with asthma. A fresh live tuna? Well, at least Pinocchio won't be hungry. Lol. Well, yeah. I mean, I like sushi as much as the next person, but I like my sushi to be, not living. So, besides that, I hear in some Korean restaurants, like, they serve the fish alive, which, I mean, that seems kind of weird. You do you, but yeah. I had a friend with asthma and Job Corps. Interesting. We're almost done, guys. 2 chapters left. Chapter 35. As soon as Pinocchio said goodbye to his good friend Tuna, he began fumbling his way on tiptoes through the darkness of the shark's belly, putting one foot in front of the other. Heading for the faint light he could see glowing in the far distance. As he walked, he could feel his feet sinking into puddles of slick, greasy water, which smelled so strongly of fried fish that it reminded him of the middle of Lent. Lent, for those who don't know, is basically fasting and giving something up for periods of time. I did it last year in Easter, and basically you just give up something for the day, and then on Sunday you can partake of the thing you've given up on. And what I did was I gave up reading manga and another thing for until Easter. So yeah, that's basically what it is, in case you guys wanted to know. And it was certainly an experience, and it was tempting, but every Sunday I did get to enjoy the things that I had given up. So that's basically what Lent is. In the middle of Lent. The farther he went, the brighter and more distinct the glow became. He walked and walked until at last he reached it. And when he reached it, do you know what he found? I'll give you 1,000 guesses. He found a small dining table, on top of which stood a green glass bottle with a burning candle in its neck, and beside which sat a little old man who looked so white he might have been made of snow or whipped cream. The man was champing absent-mindedly on some live minnows, so live they occasionally jumped right out of his mouth as he chewed. This sight filled poor Pinocchio with such great and unexpected happiness that he was just a whit away from becoming delirious. He wanted to laugh, he wanted to cry, he wanted to say a mountain of things, but instead he whimpered confusedly and stammered out a few broken, incoherent words. Finally, he managed to let loose a shout of joy, and opening his arms wide and flinging them around the little old man's neck, he began to yell, "Oh, my dear Daddy! I finally found you again! From now on, I won't ever leave you again! Not ever, not ever!" I'm a Catholic. I'm a Protestant Christian. And I never experienced Lent before until then. My uncle/godfather, the pastor of our church, Faith and Reason Ministries, he recommended it, and I decided to give it a try. It was an experience, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. The Lutherans celebrate Lent too, as do the Orthodox. Interesting. I did not know that. So yeah, Pinocchio. After a long time, he has finally found his father Geppetto again. So yeah, you got a touching reunion in the stomach of a shark, an enormous cute shark. "So my eyes are not deceiving me," replied the little old man, rubbing his eyes. "So you really are my dear Pinocchio?" Yes, it's me. It's really me. And you've already forgiven me, haven't you? Oh, my dear Daddy, how good you are. And to think that I, on the other hand... Oh, but if only you knew what misfortunes have rained down on my head. How many things have gone wrong for me. The truth is, poor Daddy, the day you sold your coat buying me a spelling book so I could go to school, I ran off to see the puppet show. And the puppet master wanted to throw me on fire to help roast his ram. And he was the only one who ended up giving me 5 gold coins to bring to you. But I ran to the fox and the cat, who took me to the Red Crayfish Inn, where they ate like wolves. And when I left alone that night, I ran into murderers who started chasing after me. And I ran, and they chased, and I kept running, and they kept chasing, until they hung me from a branch of the great oak, where the beautiful girl with sky blue hair sent a little carriage to fetch me.
And when the doctors visited, they said at once, if he's not dead, it's a sign he's still alive. And then a lie slipped out of my mouth, and my nose started growing, and wouldn't fit through the door, which is why I went with the fox and the cat to bury the 4 gold coins, one of which I had spent on the inn. And the parrot started laughing, and instead of 2,000 coins, I found nothing, causing the judges, when he heard I'd been robbed, to send me straight to jail to reward the thieves. And as I was leaving, I saw a nice bunch of grapes in the field, but I got caught in a trap, and the farmer, who goodness knows had the right, put a dog collar on me so I could guard his hen house. And then recognized my innocence and let me go. And the serpent with the smoking tail started laughing and burst a vein in his heart. And that's how I went back to the house of the beautiful girl who was dead. And a pigeon saw me crying and said, "Oh, I saw your daddy building a boat to go looking for you." And I said, "Oh, if only I had wings." And he said, "Do you want me to take you to your daddy?" And I said, "If only, but who will take me?" And he said, "I'll take you." And I said, "How?" And he said, "Climb on my back." And so we flew all night. Then in the morning, all the fishermen looking out to sea told me there's a poor fellow in a little boat who's about to drown. And I recognized you right away, aiming from that distance, because my heart told me, and waved you to come back to shore.
Ah, my dad would never buy me My dad should never buy me a spell book. I don't want to get hung from a tree. Not a spell book. Spell books are for magic. A spelling book. A spelling book it teaches you how to spell. And the only way you'd get hung from a tree is if you gave up the book for gold pieces to see a circus, escaped the circus, ran into 2 shifty con artists and followed them, and then they tried robbing you for those coins, pretending to be assassins and hanging you from a tree. That's the only way you'd get hung. The spelling book initially wouldn't get you hung. What denomination? Person. Yeah. Yeah, I'll forgive you with a swift kick at your wooden behind. I mean, if my kid had run away and they ended up coming back, I would hug them, I would kiss them, but then I would proceed to give them a gift smack. It's like, don't ever freaking do that to me again. I love you, but and then I proceed to hug him again because anyway, I don't have kids, so not yet anyway, but at the end of the day, I do want them, despite the fact that it's not an easy task to be a parent. So, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. A swift kick to the wooden behind wouldn't hurt. Okay, so after that mouthful of exposition from Pinocchio, all right, so fast. "I recognized you too," said Geppetto, "and I would gladly have come back to shore, but how? The sea was rough and a big wave flipped my boat over. And when the terrible shark saw me nearby in the water, he raced towards me, snatched me right up with his tongue, and gulped me down like a ravioli." "And how long have you been trapped in here?" asked Pinocchio. "From that day on, it must be 2 years now. 2 years, my dear Pinocchio, that seem like 2 centuries." "And how have you managed to get by? And where did you find the candle? And the matches for it? Who gave them to you?" "I'll tell you the whole story. You see, the same storm that flipped my boat over also sank a merchant ship. The sailors were all rescued, but the ship went to the bottom, and this same shark, who had an excellent appetite that day after swallowing me, swallowed that ship too." "What? Swallowed it whole?" asked Pinocchio, amazed. "In a single gulp. And the only thing he spit back out was the mainmast, which got stuck in his teeth like a fishbone. Luckily for me, that ship was supplied not only with tins of preserved meat, but also hardtack, which is shipbread, bottles of wine, raisins, cheese, coffee, sugar, tallow candles, and boxes of wax matches. Thanks to these gifts from heaven, I've been able to get by for 2 years, but now I'm down to the last crumbs. The pantry's empty, and this candle that you see burning is the last one I have." "And then?" "And then, my dear, we'll both be left in the dark." "In that case, dear Daddy," said Pinocchio, "there's no time to lose. We must quickly think how to escape." "Escape? How?" "We'll escape through the shark's mouth and swim away across the sea." "That sounds great, my dear Pinocchio, except that I don't know how to swim." "So? You can climb on my back, and I'm such a good swimmer that I'll bring you safe and sound back to shore." "You're dreaming, my boy," replied Geppetto, shaking his head and smiling sadly. "Do you think a puppet like you, barely a meter tall, could possibly be strong enough to swim with me on your back? Try it and you'll see. Anyway, if it's written in the stars that we're going to die, at least we'll have the consolation of dying in each other's arms." And without another word, Pinocchio took the candle, and as he went ahead to light the way, he said to his daddy,
Follow me and don't be scared." And so they trekked from one end of the shark's belly to the other, and when they came to the point where the monster's roomy throat began, they thought it was wise to stop and look around and wait for the right moment to escape. You see, since the shark was quite old and suffered from asthma and heart palpitations, he had to sleep with his mouth open. So, when Pinocchio stood on the edge of the shark's throat, he looked up. He could see through the enormous gaping mouth a nice chunk of starry sky and some lovely moonlight. "This is the right moment to escape," he whispered, turning to his daddy. "The shark is sleeping like a log, the sea is calm, and it's almost as light as day. So come on, Daddy, follow me and soon we'll be saved." Wasting no time, they jumped up the sea monster's throat, and once they reached his vast mouth, they began to tiptoe across his tongue, a tongue so wide that it looked like a garden path. They were just about to hurl themselves into the sea with a great leap. But just at that very moment, the shark sneezed, and sneezed so violently that Pinocchio and Geppetto were knocked backward and flung once more to the bottom of the monster's belly. When they landed with a crash, their candle went out, and father and son were left in the dark. "Now what?" asked Pinocchio, looking serious. "Now, my boy, we're done for." Seems like he made out like a bandit with that ship. He was extremely fortunate. He was able to survive. I mean, hey, at least the shark has fine taste and swallowed a whole merchant ship. But that just further proves the point of his size. If you want the Mershark Navy to help, they need to have some Alice in Wonderland magic and harpoons. Anywho, let's see. We're done for. "Why? Give me your hand, Daddy, and be careful not to slip." "Where are you taking me?" "We have to try again. Come with me and don't be scared." And so Pinocchio took his daddy by the hand, and they tiptoed up again on the monster's throat. From there they walked the entire length of the tongue over and clambered over the 3 rows of teeth before making the big leap. The puppet said to his daddy, "Climb onto my back and hold on as tight as you can. I'll take care of the rest." As soon as Geppetto had a firm grip on his son's back, good Pinocchio leapt into the water and began to swim. Swimming, full of confidence. The sea was as smooth as oil, the moon was shining in all its brilliance, and the shark went on sleeping, a slumber so deep that not even a cannon could have woken him. Chapter 36. Sorry. The last chapter. Chapter 36. As Pinocchio swiftly swam towards the beach, he realized that his daddy, who was clinging to his back with his legs in the water, was trembling uncontrollably, as if the poor man were suffering from malarial fever. Was he trembling from cold or from fear? Who can say? Perhaps a little of both. But Pinocchio, thinking he was trembling from fear, tried to comfort him by saying, "Don't worry, Daddy. In a few minutes we'll reach the shore and be safe." "But where is this blessed shore?" asked the little old man, growing more and more anxious, squinting like a tailor threading a needle. "Here I am looking in every direction, and I can't see anything but sky and sea." "But I can see the shore as well," said the puppet. "For your information, I'm like a cat. I can see better by night than by day." But poor Pinocchio was only pretending to be in good spirits. In fact, he was losing hope. BRB. Okay, Wolfer. In fact, he was losing hope. He was running out of strength and breath. He couldn't go on much longer, and the shore was still far away. He swam until he had no breath left. Then he turned his head towards Geppetto and stammered out these words, "Oh, Daddy, help me! I'm dying!" Both father and son were by now on the verge of drowning when they heard a voice that sounded like an out-of-tune guitar. "Who's dying?" "I am, and my poor daddy." "I recognize that voice. You're Pinocchio." "That's right. And you?" "I'm the tuna, your cellmate from the shark's belly." "How did you manage to escape?" "I followed your example. You showed me the way, and I escaped after you did." "My dear Tuna, you've arrived in the nick of time. I beg you, for the love you bear your little tuna children, help us, or we're done for." Gladly, with all my heart. Grab hold of my tail, both of you, and let me pull you. I'll reach the shore in just a few minutes. Excuse me. One good turn deserves another. We must help each other in this world. A few minutes. Geppetto and Pinocchio, as you might imagine, accepted this invitation at once, but instead of holding onto his tail, they decided it would be more comfortable to climb right onto his back. Are we too heavy? Pinocchio asked. Heavy? Not in the least. I feel like I have a couple of conch shells on my back, replied the tuna, who was big and strong as a young bull. When they reached the shore, Pinocchio jumped off first so he could help his daddy get down. Then he turned to the tuna. In a voice full of emotion, he said, My friend, you have saved my daddy. No words of mine can ever thank you enough, but at least let me give you a kiss as a sign of my eternal gratitude. The tuna lifted his snout out of the water, and Pinocchio, kneeling on the ground, gave him a heartfelt kiss right on the mouth. The poor tuna, not used to such spontaneous and genuine displays of affection, was so moved that he started crying like a baby. And embarrassed to be seen in such a state, he plunged his head back under the water and vanished. By this time, the sun was up. As he offered his arm to Geppetto, who was so tired he could barely stand, Pinocchio said, Just lean on my arm, dear daddy, and let's be on our way. I'm back. Yay, Wolfer. The phone's ringing. Liam! So I just want to make sure the phone call's nothing important. I'll get back to reading as soon as it's done, I promise. If it's for me, I'll go answer it really quick. Oh, it's not for me, it's for my dad. Okay. Whoosh. The hair flip was totally neat. I'm back, so yeah. Okay. Geppetto was so tired he could barely stand. Pinocchio said, Just lean on my arm, dear daddy, and let's be on our way. We'll walk ever so slowly like ants, and when we get tired, we'll rest beside the road. And where are we supposed to go? Asked Geppetto. We'll look for a house or a hut, where someone might give us, out of charity, a mouthful of bread and a little straw for our bed. After no more than 100 paces, they saw sitting by the roadside 2 ugly mugs, begging for handouts. Like a little wooden jet ski. Yes, well, Pinocchio made it part of the way, but then the tuna, who escaped the mouth of the shark by following Pinocchio's example, helped them get the rest of the way to land. So yeah, now they see 2 ugly mugs begging for handouts. It was the cat and the fox, but they had changed so much that they were scarcely recognizable. The cat, you see, had pretended for so long to be blind that eventually he really did go blind, and the fox was now old, mangy, and completely paralyzed on one side. He had even lost his tail. That's how it goes. That wicked thief, after falling on very hard times indeed, found himself traveling one fine day, forced to sell his beautiful tail to a traveling salesman who bought it because he needed a fly swatter. Oh, Pinocchio! Shouted the fox in a whiny voice. Have a little pity on these 2 poor invalids. Invalids! Repeated the cat. So long, charlatans, replied the puppet. You fooled me once, but I'll never fall for your tricks again. But it's true, Pinocchio. Now we really are poor and wretched. Wretched, repeated the cat. If you're poor, you deserve it. Remember the proverb that says, stolen money never bears fruit. Goodbye, charlatans. Have mercy on us. On us. Goodbye, charlatans. Remember the proverb that says, the devil's flour turns out to be chaff. Don't leave us alone. No, repeated the cat. Goodbye, charlatans. Remember the proverb that says, he who steals his neighbor's cloak will die without a shirt. With these words, Pinocchio and Geppetto resumed their calm walk down the road until after another 100 paces or so, they saw at the end of the path, in the middle of the fields, a nice hut made entirely of straw, but with a roof covered with terracotta tiles. Someone must live in that hut, Pinocchio said. Let's go and knock. They went and they knocked at the door. Oh, someone must live in that hut. Pinocchio, let's go and knock. They went and they knocked on the door.
Thanks again, Tuna. You're as helpful as you are delicious. No, Wolfer, that's not how it happens. The tuna helps him to the shore, and Pinocchio gives him a kiss, a thank you kiss. And the tuna, who was not used to spontaneous acts of genuine affection, began crying like a baby. And ashamed to be seen crying like a little baby, he dove back into the water and swam off. So no, the tuna does not get eaten. Although I want sushi so badly. Dang it! Anyway. Okay, so Fox and the cat are now miserable, and they've gotten their just desserts, and now they're going to be alone, and they're suffering for all their wicked deeds. Serves you right. Anyway, they went and they knocked at the door. "Who is it?" asked a little voice inside. "We're a poor father and a poor son with nothing to eat and no place to stay," replied the puppet. "Turn the key and the door will open," said the little voice. Let's see. The door will open. Pinocchio turned the key and the door opened. Once inside, they looked around but saw no one. "Hello? Where is the owner of this hut?" Pinocchio asked, surprised. "I'm up here." Father and son quickly looked at the ceiling, and there, sitting on a beam, they saw the talking cricket. "Oh, my dear little cricket," said Pinocchio in a friendly voice. "So now you're calling me your dear little cricket, are you? Do you recall trying to drive me out of your house by throwing a wooden mallet at me?" "You're right, dear cricket. Now you can drive me out. You can even throw a wooden mallet at me. But have mercy on my poor daddy." "I'll have mercy on the father and also on the son. But I wanted to remind you of the cruel treatment I received, and to show you that in this world, whenever possible, we should treat others kindly if we wish to be treated with similar kindness in our hour of need." "You're right, dear cricket. You're absolutely right, and I'll never forget the lesson you've taught me. But tell me, how did you manage to buy yourself this beautiful hut?" "This hut was given to me yesterday by a charming goat, whose fleece was the most beautiful sky blue color." "And where did the goat go?" asked Pinocchio, extremely curious. "I don't know." "And when will she be back?" "She won't ever be back. She was extremely distressed when she left yesterday, and she seemed to be bleating the words, 'Poor Pinocchio! Now I'll never see him again. The shark must have devoured him by now.'" "She really said that? Then it was her! It was her! It was my dear fairy!" yelled Pinocchio, sobbing and heaving uncontrollably. After a good cry, he dried his eyes and prepared a nice bed of straw for old Geppetto to lie down on. Then he asked the talking cricket, "Tell me, dear cricket, where can I find a glass of milk for my poor daddy?" 3 fields away there's a man named Giangio, who has a small farm with some cows. Go to him and you'll find the milk you seek." Pinocchio rushed to the house of the farmer named Giangio. But the farmer said, "How much milk do you want?" "I want a full glass." "A glass of milk costs a nickel. You can pay me the nickel first." "I don't even have a penny," said Pinocchio, thoroughly embarrassed and dejected. "That's bad, my puppet," replied the farmer. "If you don't have a penny, then I don't even have a swallow of milk." "Oh, well," said Pinocchio, turning to leave. "Just a moment," said Giangio. "You and I can work out something. Are you willing to turn a donkey wheel?" "What's a donkey wheel?" "It's that wooden contraption which draws water up from the cistern, so I can water my vegetables." "I'll try." "All right, then. Pull me up 100 buckets of water, and I'll give you a glass of milk in exchange." "Okay." Giangio led the puppet to the garden and showed him how to turn the wheel. Pinocchio went to work at once. By the time he had finished pulling up the 100 buckets, he was dripping with sweat from head to toe. Never in his life had he worked so hard. "Up to now," said the farmer, "this work was done by my donkey, but that poor creature has come to the end of his days." "Will you take me to see him?" Pinocchio asked. "Gladly." As soon as Pinocchio entered the stall, he saw a donkey stretched out on the straw, worn out from hunger and overwork. When Pinocchio had given him a long, hard look, he said to himself uneasily, "But I know this donkey. I've seen that face before." And leaning down toward the donkey, Pinocchio asked him in asinine dialect, "Who are you?" The devil's flour always turns out to be chaff. I'm going to use that. I mean, you can use it if you want, but that's not the right flour. It's spelled like this, like, flour for making bread and cookies and stuff like that. Not the pretty flowers that we pick and sniff because they smell nice and they're so pretty to look at. Anyway, but yeah. Sorry. But so he knows this donkey. Who's the donkey? Thanks. You're welcome, Wolfer. And leaning down toward the donkey, Pinocchio asked him in asinine dialect, "Who are you?" Hearing this question, the donkey opened his dying eyes and answered in the same dialect, I am Wick." Then he closed his eyes and passed away. "Oh, poor Lampwick," said Pinocchio softly, and picking up a handful of straw, he wiped away a tear that was rolling down his cheek. You're so worked up about a donkey that didn't cost you a cent," said the farmer. "How should I feel after paying good money for him?" "I can explain. He was a friend of mine." "A friend? A classmate of mine?" "What?" shouted Giangio, bursting into laughter. "What? You had jackasses for classmates? I can't imagine what a fine education you got." The puppet, mortified by these words, did not reply. "He came back to life?" "Nope." Lampwick only uttered who he was in answer to Pinocchio's question, and then he died. It's kind of sad, but there's again that symbolism to that, because some people, even when geez, I'm getting worked up in the feels because of Lampwick's death, which is kind of a tragedy, but I mean, again, in real life, it kind of does happen. And it's all the more tragic. So no, Lampwick doesn't come back to life. He dies. Let's see. Okay. The puppet was mortified by these words, but did not reply. He took his glass of warm milk and went back to the cricket's hut. From that day on, for the next 5 months, he continued getting up every morning before dawn so that he could turn the donkey wheel and earn that glass of milk, which was doing so much to improve his poor daddy's health. Nor was this all he did. In his spare time, he learned to weave baskets out of reeds, and by carefully managing the money he made from selling the baskets, he was able to cover their daily expenses. On top of that, he built an elegant wheelchair all by himself so that he could take his daddy out for strolls in fresh air when the weather was nice. And in the evenings, he practiced reading and writing in a nearby village, and he had paid a few cents for a big book, which was missing its title page and index, and that's how he practiced his reading. As for writing, he used a sharpened twig for a pen, and lacking both inkwell and ink, he dipped the twig into a little bottle full of blackberry and cherry juice. Managing the money. Pinocchio's got better money managing skills than I do. I need to get better at that, and I plan to. It's another thing about it, being an adult. You gotta manage your money. But he's learning how to read, and he's getting better. And Geppetto's health is recovering. One morning, he said to his father, I'm going to the nearby market to buy myself a jacket, a cap, and a pair of shoes. When I come home, he added with a laugh, I'll be so well dressed that you'll mistake me for a rich gentleman. After leaving the house, he began running happily. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name, and when he turned, he saw a pretty snail peeking out from the hedge. Don't you recognize me? Asked the snail. You do look familiar. Don't you remember the snail who worked as a maid for the fairy with sky blue hair? Don't you recall that night when I came downstairs to give you some light? I found you with your foot stuck in the door? I recall everything, shouted Pinocchio. Tell me at once, pretty snail, where did you last see my good fairy? What is she doing? Has she forgiven me? Does she still remember me? Does she still love me? Is she very far away? Could I see her? To all these questions asked in a rush without pausing for breath,
The snail replied with her usual cool, "My dear Pinocchio, the poor fairy is bedridden in a poorhouse." A poorhouse! Unfortunately, having suffered having suffered 1,000 hardships, she is gravely ill and cannot afford to buy herself even a crust of bread. Really? Oh, such grief you have brought me! Oh, poor fairy, poor fairy! If I had $1,000,000, I'd give it all to her. But I only have 40 nickels. Here they are. I was just going to buy myself a new outfit. Take them, snail. Carry them at once to my good fairy. And your new outfit? What do I care about a new outfit? I'd sell even these rags I'm wearing if it would help her. Go, snail, and hurry up. And come back here in 2 days' time. I hope I can give you a little more money then. Up to now, I've been working to take care of my daddy. From now on, I will work 5 extra hours per day to take care of my mother, too. Goodbye, snail. I expect you in 2 days. The snail, contrary to her custom, began running like a lizard beneath the fierce August sun. When Pinocchio returned home, his father asked him, "Where's your new outfit?" "I couldn't find one that fit me well." "Oh well, I'll buy one another time." That evening, instead of working until 10, Pinocchio worked halfway through the night. Instead of making 8 wicker baskets, he made 16. Then he went to bed and slept. And in his sleep he thought he saw the fairy in a dream, beautiful and smiling. She gave him a kiss and said, "Bravo, Pinocchio. Because of your good heart, I forgive you for every mischievous thing you've ever done. Children who dotingly look after parents who are poor or sick always deserve great praise and great love, even if they can't be considered models of obedience and good behavior. Be good from now on, and you'll be happy." At this point, the dream ended, and Pinocchio woke with wide eyes. Now imagine his amazement, readers, when upon waking, he realized that he was no longer a wooden puppet, but rather a boy, like all other boys. He looked around, and instead of the usual straw walls of their hut, he saw a lovely little room, furnished and decorated with a simplicity that was almost elegant. Jumping out of bed, he found a fine new suit of clothes laid out for him, along with a new cap and a pair of leather boots that made him look pretty as a picture. Sure. As soon as he was dressed, he naturally thrust his hands into his pocket, and there he found a little ivory coin purse, on which were written these words: "The fairy with sky blue hair returns to her dear Pinocchio his 40 nickels, and thanks him very much for his good heart." But when he opened the coin purse, instead of 40 nickels, he found 40 shining gold pieces, all fresh from the mint. At this point, he went to look in the mirror, and he thought he was someone else. No longer did he see the usual reflection of a wooden marionette. Instead, he saw the sprightly and intelligent image of a handsome boy with brown hair, blue eyes, and an expression so happy you'd have thought it was his birthday. Amid all these marvels coming one right after the other, Pinocchio no longer knew whether he was awake or just dreaming with his eyes open. "And my daddy, where is he?" Pinocchio suddenly yelled. Rushing next to the room, he found Geppetto, healthy and spry and in good spirits as in times past, having already resumed his wood-carving trade. He was working at designing a beautiful picture frame, richly adorned with leaves and flowers and the little heads of various animals. "I'm curious, dear Daddy. How do you explain all this sudden change?" Pinocchio asked, throwing his arms around him and kissing him. "This sudden change in our house is all thanks to you," said Geppetto. "Thanks to me?" "Yes, because when children who were once naughty become nice, their whole families change and become happier." "And the old wooden Pinocchio, where is he now?" "Over there," replied Geppetto, pointing to a big puppet that was propped against a chair, its head lolling to one side, its arms dangling, and its legs crossed to a bent over the knee. From the looks of it would take a miracle to make it stand upright. Pinocchio turned to see it, and after staring for a little while, he said to himself with enormous satisfaction, "How funny I was when I was a puppet, and how happy I am now that I have become a proper little boy." The end. And that is the story of Pinocchio. A little wooden boy. There go my speakers. There we go. And that's the story of Pinocchio. A little wooden boy who, through trial and hardship and learning time and time again from his mistakes, eventually became a real wooden boy. So, I told you the story was messed up, and I hope I've delivered. I mean, I think I did with the way Carlo Collodi writes. But that was the story, and as I said before, despite the fact that it is a fairy tale with serpents, with giant serpents with smoking tail, enormous sharks that can have asthma, and talking cats, and talking foxes, and talking crickets, and fairies, and such things of the like, despite the fact that it's a work of fantasy, the morals still ring true in the real world and can still be applied to the real world. And obviously there are many, many, many morals in the story. Sorry. But yeah, in the whole story there are morals after morals after morals, and I could list them, but if I did, we'd be here for another hour. And we're currently at 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 24 seconds, according to the timer, which is still ticking. But yeah, that was the story of Pinocchio. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. And despite that I usually like having short stories to where these episodes are not hours long, I'm glad that I read this story to you guys, and I don't mind doing the multiple 3-part series of these stories. So yeah, that was the story of Pinocchio. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, after everything, Pinocchio eventually did become a real little boy. So I mean, it's a good lesson to learn. I mean, all the morals are. And I'm glad you guys liked it. I'm sorry that I didn't start it at 11 like I usually do. I mean, I thought I was going to go into town and run errands, but apparently not, because I was still reading, but that's life. And yeah. So what did you guys think? Because in part 1, I mentioned the animated Disney film, and I mentioned the live-action Disney film, and how much I dislike that. What did you guys think of the original story by Carlo Collodi? I'm genuinely curious. Did you see similarities in the book from the movies? Did you enjoy the story? Who was your favorite character? Why was that character your favorite? Like, I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below of this video. And hey, if you want to know who my favorites were, you can always ask me. And this is messed up. I know it's messed up, but I mean, all the fairy tales I read on this series are messed up in their own way. But I'm curious, what was your favorite messed up scene in the story of Pinocchio? What was your favorite messed up scene? Again, let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the story. He made it at long last. Yes, I remember reading Pinocchio for the first time, and I'm like, finally, thank you, happy ending. You know what? He deserved it. Because he helped his father Geppetto, and he finally learned, and he grew to be a better person. And at the end of the day, for people who are trying to better themselves, it is hard work, and you are going to face hardships, but at the end of it, when you come out on the other side a better person, all those hardships and all the hard work and everything you endured, it will be worth it. And so yeah, happy ending from Pinocchio. And yeah, next story I'm going to read will be shorter, hopefully, but
Yeah, I don't mind the hour-long specials, but I don't think I'd ever read a story, like a long story in one go. That would take forever. But yeah, that was the story of Pinocchio. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts and what your favorite messed up scene was in the book in the comments below. And yeah, that just about sums it up. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!